right, hi YouTube. Hello. Is it working well over there? I am seeing buffering. Is it working? Okay, no, maybe it's okay. Hi, Geistface. You're bored and you need to sleep. Could I interest you in some stout and lusty stories? Perhaps some stories could put you to sleep. Oh, Tyra, thank you. Thank you. I hope you are as well. Okay, there's a message pinned over on YouTube and of the book that we are reading. Doesn't seem okay, cool. Alright, never mind then. All good. We are going to be finishing The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood tonight. It did go longer. It did last longer than I expected, but as I was saying over on Twitch, I maintain that it is seasonal. It is seasonal because it has the word merry in it. So that's all we need. Yes, if you would like to watch over on YouTube, as in like never leaving Twitch, that's not at all what I'm suggesting. But if you have the capacity and inclination to open it up, you know, just another window on your PC, that actually really helps with watch hours, which is a goal that we are working on. So it's very much appreciated, but not at all expected. Zero pressure to do that. Geistface with the resub. Geistface, thank you. What the heck? Thank you so much. 5 months now. Thank you. Oh man, thank you so much. And if you are still around by the time we wrap up the reading, I would love to give you a name trace for that later tonight. Thank you so much. Tyra, oh, tested positive for COVID. Oh no. Oh, Tyra. I hope that you are feeling better quickly, and yeah, that oof. I'm so sorry. You need your books badge. Christmas, it has been expensive. Yes, it is an expensive time. It is an expensive time. Okay. Your internet's working better tonight. The storm last... Dude, have you also been having storms? It has been crazy weather here. Oh my goodness. Absolutely wild. Luckily, it cleared up just enough for me to be able to do a little bit of Christmas shopping. But, oh my goodness, welcome in, Raiders. Eliza Task, welcome. Hello, Raiders. Hello. Oh my goodness. How are you doing? What were you guys getting up to tonight? Hi, Carl. Hi, Natillo. Wii U. Never seen this Wii U in my life. And Eliza, thank you for the follow. Hello. Oh, thank you. And Deosato, hello. Hey, Will, thank you for gifting a sub to Eliza. What were you guys doing tonight? Are you coming from the ASMR section, or were you doing something else? We used the one that recommended. Aw, thank you. You were doing ASMR? Amazing. Well, I hope that went well for you. Let me drop you a follow as well. Well, hello. It is so good to have you guys here. Also, hi, Granite Gumshoe. Little crazy stream. I hear that. Yeah. You guys came in at a great time, though. if you're new here, I'm Faolkor. We do a mixture of traditional ASMR, usually on the chatty side, lots of soft-spoken stuff, and generally triggers to redeem, except for during the portion of our stream when we do story time, which we are just getting started on story time, so wonderful timing. We may be doing, we sometimes go back to doing like extended ASMR after story time, dependent on schedule, and also if I'm in too much pain, I deal with some chronic pain stuff. But we've been reading The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, and they're just hysterical, and we are going to be finishing that up tonight. But it's really easy to come in on because it's less so like chapters of a book and more like little vignettes, and I'll catch you guys up with what's going on anyways. But yeah, you guys make sure you're dropping a follow for Eliza Task and checking out her content. That's amazing. It was a great stream. Hell yeah. That's awesome to hear. Yeah, so we have been reading The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, which is okay. So once a month we do a bonus stream called either Mythology Monday or Folklore Friday, just depending on whether I hold it on a Monday or Friday. But basically we read folklore and mythology from cultures all around the world and throughout history. And in November, at the end of November when we did ours, we read some tales of Robin Hood, and we found them so much fun that we decided to just continue reading them. Our next Mythology Monday is actually going to be this coming Monday. So, you know, keep an eye out for that. But we only have 2 little stories left of Robin Hood that we'll be wrapping up tonight. Yeah. The joking around about drinking games in chat is because this author has a limited vocabulary in some ways, and uses a lot of the same words a lot, specifically stout and lusty. Everyone and everything is stout and lusty. It's kind of crazy. Granite Gum shit. That is a good name. That is a good name. Oh yes, and Eliza, please feel free to pop out whenever you need to. Don't be afraid to raid and run if you're tired after your own stream. I really appreciate the raid. It is awesome to meet you and to have you guys come and join us. Yeah. Okay, so Robin Hood has been in a bit of a pickle. The king is trying to catch him, and he has been separated from Sherwood Forest. Wait, did he get back in at the very end? No. Yes. The queen had him escorted, right, into the forest? Is that correct? Yes. Yes. Okay, he did get back to Sherwood. How are my eyes doing? What do you mean? Oh, you mean like the skin around my eyes? Yeah, it's not completely better. I think I may have just like developed like a condition. Like I don't know. Anyways, basically whenever I'm not wearing makeup, I just am constantly putting lotion on my eyes. Is one of the drinks in it. Okay, so what people were doing, and I'm not condoning this. I'm not pushing this or suggesting it or whatever. But if you're an adult and you want to, do your thing. But just basically, if I say certain words. But you can also, do shots of water or juice or whatever if you want to, like, join in the game but don't want to drink. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this chapter that we're about to start is called Robin Hood and Guy of Gisbourne, which is a name I recognize. You don't need to have alcohol to join if you want to take shots of, like, another drink, or if you've got eggnog, which does not have to have alcohol in it, or whatever you want. Is it pronounced Guy? I wasn't sure. I mean, it is a French name, Guy, Gisbourne, but I'm also aware that, like, the English, I'm sorry, look, I love you guys. You are so bad at pronouncing French words. I say as a Canadian, where French is one of our national languages, the pronunciations of French that I heard over in England are just atrocious. So I wasn't sure if this was an anglicized name, because he's not an actual French guy, right? Is he? Hi, Loki. Eggnog pie? What? That's a thing? Welcome in and thank you for the follow, Thighs Worshipper. Hello. What's wrong with saying beef? What? No, the most egregious example from, okay, so this was years ago. I briefly lived in England, and I remember, like, asking someone, I'm like, oh, do you know the direction to get to Beaulieu? And they're like, what? And I'm like, what's a little town around here, Beaulieu? And I showed them on the map, and they're like, oh, Bewley? And I was like, oh. Oh no. Bewley. Oh dear. Okay. Oh yeah. All the meat words for, like, food meat come from the French, whereas, like, the animal comes from the German. So, like, beef is from boeuf, mutton, mouton. I guess chicken we just call chicken. We don't care enough about chickens to give them a different word. You gotta call it Central Butt. How is it spelled? Like this. Oops. Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't have said German. I should have said Germanic. Germanic root. Saxon is Germanic root, but Beaulieu. It's obviously Beaulieu, which means beautiful place. It just translates as, like, beautiful place, but they pronounce it Bewley. All right. Beautiful. Okay. So, anyways, but does anyone here know, in terms of the character from this book, is it Guy or Guy? Does anyone know? For the character, Guy of Gisbourne, Guy of Gisbourne. Does anyone know? Calais is pronounced Calas? That's tough. What? You guys aren't pronounced... You're just... You guys are just spelling it the way it's spelled. That doesn't help me with pronunciation. VCTRVS. Welcome, thank you for the follow. Oh, Frab just day, Kalu, Kalas. You thought it. You guys are not spelling the pronunciation. Yeah, I've always heard it pronounced Guy. I'm pretty sure he's Guy of Gisbourne, even though you're correct that the name originally comes from French and would be pronounced Guy. Hi, Moonstar. Oh, no, the name spelled G-U-Y. You guys keep saying it's pronounced G-U-Y, but that's the spelling that also can be pronounced Gee, so that doesn't... It's not Gay of Gisbourne. That's not... We're adults, and we read literature here. Gay of Gisbourne and David of Dongcatcher are good pals. Gif of Gifborn? Gif of Gifborn? Oh, jeez. I tell you what. I'm pronouncing it Guy. Get fucked. And you know that... Okay, unless during the story it's like, he came straight from France, and then I will change. Then I'll change it, but I'm pretty sure in the context of Robin Hood, he's an Englishman with a French name, right? Guy, get fucked. Artex, thank you for the pities. In Hindi, G-U-Y is the word for a cow? Really? Honestly, Gay of Gisbourne would be an amazing drag persona as well. Okay. Let's actually read some goddamn literature. If you would like to follow along, there's a comment pinned at the top of chat. Or you could, in Twitch chat, you can do !book, and that will give you a link where you can either download this book and read along, or even just open it in a browser tab and read along. Why did the word goy get held for bullying? Isn't that not a mean word? Like, I know that's a word used by Jewish people to, like, talk about non-Jewish people, right? But I didn't ever think it was, like, an insult, right? Like, it might be a little bit teasing, but not, like, actually mean, right? Does it get used for bullying? It depends on the context. It's memed by neo-Nazis? Okay. I was missing that context. I've only... Look. I've only heard it used on TV. And it was always very lighthearted in those contexts. So. Okay. Alright. Alright then. Robin Hood and Guy of Gisbourne. A long time passed after the great shooting match, and during that time, Robin followed one part of the advice of Sir Robert Lee, to wit, that of being less bold in his comings and goings, For though mayhap he may not have been more honest, as most folk regard honesty, he took good care not to travel so far from Sherwood that he could not reach it both easily and quickly. Great changes had fallen in this time, for King Henry had died, and King Richard had come to the crown that fitted him so well through many hard trials, and through adventures as stirring as any that ever befell Robin Hood. But though great changes came, they did not reach to Sherwood's shades, for there Robin Hood and his men dwelled as merrily as they had ever done, with hunting and feasting and singing and blithe woodland sports, for it was little the outside striving of the world troubled them. I read that sentence so poorly, let me try that again. For it was little the outside striving of the world troubled them. The dawning of a summer's day was fresh and bright, and the birds sang sweetly in a great tumult of sound. So loud was their singing that it awakened Robin Hood where he lay sleeping, so that he stirred and turned and arose. Up rose Little John also, and all the merry men. Then after they had broken their fast, they set forth hither and thither upon the doings of the day. Robin Hood and Little John walked down a forest path where all around the leaves danced and twinkled as the breeze trembled through them and the sunlight came flickering down. Quoth Robin Hood, I make my vow, Little John, my blood tickles my veins as it flows through them this gay morn. What sayest thou to our seeking adventures, each one upon his own account? With all my heart, said Little John. We have had more than one pleasant doing in that way, good master. Here are 2 paths. Take thou the one to the right hand, and I will take the one to the left. And then let us each walk straight ahead till he tumble into some merry doing or other. I like thy plan, quoth Robin, therefore we will part here. But look thee, Little John, keep thyself out of mischief, for I would not have ill befall thee for all the world. Marry, come up, quoth Little John, how thou talkest. Methinks thou art wont to get thyself into tighter coils than I am like to do. Did stream fail, or are we good? Are we good? Okay. OBS went all black. There was a bit of a hitch? Okay. God, OBS is stressing me out. It looked like it was gonna crash again. Which would be the second time tonight. Come on, OBS. It hiccuped? Okay. You look very cute tonight with the Elvira hair. Thank you. Everyone's having issues this and last week, really? With OBS specifically? I haven't done the last update. Okay, let me start that sentence again. Methinks thou art wont to get thyself into tighter coils than I am like to do. At this, Robin Hood laughed. Why, in sooth, Little John, said he, thou hast a blundering, hard-headed way that seemeth to bring thee right side uppermost in all thy troubles. But let us see who cometh out best this day. So saying, he clapped his palm to Little John's, and each departed upon his way, the trees quickly shutting the one from the other's sight. Ah, thank you, Moonstar. What do you mean? He's doing great. They're just clapping in the woods. It's fine. You're like the fist streamer I've seen struggling with OBS this week. Really? I heard not to update to the latest version, but I didn't. Oh my god, DJ, that's stressful. Okay. Robin Hood strolled onward till he came to where a broad woodland road stretched before him. Overhead, the branches of the trees laced together in flickering foliage, all golden where it grew thin to the sunlight. Beneath his feet, the ground was soft and moist from the sheltering shade. Here, in this pleasant spot, the sharpest adventure that ever befell Robin Hood came upon him. For as he walked down the woodland path, thinking of naught but the songs of the birds, he came of a sudden to where a man was seated upon the mossy roots beneath the shade of a broad spreading oak tree. Robin Hood saw that the stranger had not caught sight of him, so he stopped and stood quite still, looking at the other a long time before he came forward. And the stranger, I wot, was well worth looking at, for never had Robin seen a figure like that sitting beneath the tree. From his head to his feet, he was clad in a horse's hide, dressed with the hair upon it. Upon his head was a cowl that hid his face from sight, and which was made of the horse's skin, the ears whereof stuck up like those of a rabbit. His body was clad in a jacket made of the hide, and his legs were covered with the hairy skin likewise. By his side was a heavy broadsword and a sharp, double-edged dagger. A quiver of smooth, round arrows hung across his shoulders, and his stout bow of yew leaned against the tree beside him. You guys, this horse was dead before we got to the story. I can't go towards our horse death counter. Hi, Linchu. Oh my goodness, good to see you. And Buddha's here. Hi, Buddha. Wait, Linchu with the 3-string streak as well. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. You're sick. Oh no. Okay, everyone send health vibes to Linchu. I didn't. The horse was already dead. Yeah, it has to die in the story. I'm not killing horse. No. This doesn't count. But I'll give you this. If this dude dies while wearing the horse skin, we can add it to the counter. The horse was dead when we found it. Yeah. Okay. Hello, friend, cried Robin, coming forward at last. Who art thou that sittest there? And what is that thou hast upon thy body? I make my vow I have never seen such a sight in all my life before. Had I done an evil thing, or did my conscience trouble me, I would be afraid of thee, thinking that thou wast someone from down below, bringing a message bidding me to come straightway to King Nicholas. To this speech the other answered not a word, but he pushed the cowl back from his head and showed a knit brow, a hooked nose, and a pair of fierce, restless black eyes, which altogether made Robin think of a hawk as he looked on his face. But beside this, there was something about the lines on the stranger's face, and his thin, cruel mouth, and the hard glare of his eyes, that made one's flesh creep to look upon. I hope Robin asks him why the long face. Who art thou, rascal? Said he at last, in a loud, harsh voice. Tut, tut, quoth merry Robin, speak not so sourly, brother. Hast thou fed upon vinegar and nettles this morning, that thy speech is so stinging? No, like it's not my words, said the other fiercely. Thou wouldst best be jogging, for I tell thee plainly, my deeds match them. Nay, but I do like thy words, thou sweet pretty thing, quoth Robin, squatting down upon the grass in front of the other. Moreover, I tell thee thy speech is witty, and gamesome as any I ever heard in all my life. The other said not a word, but he glared upon Robin with a wicked and baleful look, such as a fierce dog bestows upon a man ere it springs at his throat. Wait, is your word stout? You're drinking at the word stout? That's a crazy one. Moonstar, have a good night. Thanks for popping in and saying hi. Robin's flirting. I think he is. He wants another merry man in his collection. The other said not a word, but he glared. Oh, right, I already read that. Robin returned the gaze with one of wide-eyed innocence, not a shadow of a smile twinkling in his eyes or twitching at the corners of his mouth. So they sat, staring at one another for a long time, until the stranger broke the silence, suddenly. "What is thy name, fellow?" said he. "Now," quoth Robin, "I am right glad to hear thee speak, for I began to fear the sight of me had stricken thee dumb. As for my name, it may be this, or it may be that, but methinks it is more meet for thee to tell me thine, seeing as thou art the greater stranger in these parts. Prithee, tell me, sweet chuck, why wearest thou that dainty garb upon thy pretty body?" At these words, the other broke into a short, harsh roar of laughter. "By the bones of the demon Odin," said he, "thou art the boldest spoken man that ever I have seen in all my life. I know not why I do not smite thee down where thou sittest, for only 2 days ago I skewered a man over back of Nottingham town for saying not half so much to me as thou hast done. I wear this garb, thou fool, to keep my body warm. Likewise, it is near as good as a coat of steel against a common sword thrust. As for my name, I care not who knoweth it. It is Guy of Gisbourne, and thou mayst have heard it before. I come from the woodlands over in Herefordshire, upon the lands of the bishop of that ilk. I am an outlaw, and get my living by hook and by crook, in a manner it boots not now to tell of. Not long since the bishop sent for me and said that if I would do a certain thing that the sheriff of Nottingham would ask of me, he would get me a free pardon, and give me 10 pounds to boot. So, straightway I came to Nottingham town, and found my sweet sheriff, and what thinkest thou he wanted of me? Why, forsooth, to come here to Sherwood, to hunt up one Robin Hood, also an outlaw, and to take him, alive or dead. Well, it seemeth that they have no one here to face that bold fellow, and so sent all the way to Herefordshire, and to me. For thou knowest the old saying, set a thief to catch a thief. Well, as for the slaying of this fellow, it galleth me not a whit, for I would shed the blood of my own brother for the half of 200 pounds. He's putting together a harem. Yep. Oh. To all this, Robin listened. And as he listened, his gorge rose. Oh no. He's engorged. Well he knew of this Guy of Gisbourne, and of all the bloody and murderous deeds that he had done in Herefordshire. for his doings were famous throughout all the land. Stop it. Sorry. Whoa. Whoa. And what a time for the pee-pee to rise. Connor. Connor. Oh my goodness, thank you for that tier 3 sub. 10 months of incredible ASMR. Faolkor, thank you for your amazing streams, this amazing community. Connor, you're so freaking sweet. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Hell yeah, big PP action. Connor, thank you. How are you doing tonight? It's so good to see you. For his doings were famous throughout all the land. Yet, although he loathed the very presence of this man, he held his peace, for he had an end to save. No, for he had an end to serve. Truly, quoth he, I have heard of thy gentle doings. Methinks there is no one in all the world that Robin Hood would rather meet than thee. At this, Guy of Gisbourne gave another harsh laugh. Why, quoth he, it is a merry thing to think of one stout outlaw like Robin Hood meeting another stout outlaw like Guy of Gisbourne. Only in this case it will be an ill happening for Robin Hood, for the day he meets Guy of Gisbourne, he shall die. Be thou gentle, merry spirit, quoth Robin. Dost thou not think that mayhap this same Robin Hood may be the better man of the two? I know him right well, and many think that he is one of the stoutest men hereabouts. You guys are gonna be fucked. I think you should choose a different word for your drinking game. Is it just unwise on your part? Like this 3 in a row. And hold on, because there's a 4th coming up in just a second, so. Well, he may be the stoutest of men hereabouts, quoth Guy of Gisbourne, yet I tell thee, fellow, this die of yours is not the wide world. I lay my life upon it that I am the better man of the two. He an outlaw, forsooth. Why, I hear that he hath never let blood in all his life, saving when he first came to the forest. Some call him a great archer. Marry, I would not be afraid to stand against him all the days of the year with a bow in my hand. Why, truly, some folk do call him a great archer, said Robin Hood. But we of Nottinghamshire are famous hands with the longbow. Even I, though but a simple hand at the craft, would not fear to try a bout with thee. At these words, Guy of Gisbourne looked upon Robin with wondering eyes, and then gave another roar of laughter till the woods rang. Now, quoth he, thou art a bold fellow to talk to me in this way. I like thy spirit in so speaking up to me, for few men have dared to do so. Put up a garland, lad, and I will try about with thee. Tut tut, quoth Robin, only babes shoot at garlands hereabout. I will put up a good Nottingham mark for thee. So saying, he arose, and going to a hazel thicket not far off, he cut a wand about twice the thickness of a man's thumb. From this he peeled the bark, and, sharpening the point, stuck it up in the ground in front of a great oak tree. Thence he measured off 80 paces, which brought him beside the tree where the other sat. There, quoth he, is the kind of mark that Nottingham yeomen shoot at. Now, let me see thee split that wand, if thou art an archer. Then Guy of Gisbourne arose. Now, out upon it, cried he. The devil himself could not hit such a mark as that. Mayhap he could, and mayhap he could not, quoth merry Robin. But that we shall never know, till thou hast shot thereat. At these words, Guy of Gisbourne looked upon Robin with knit brows, but as the yeoman still looked innocent of any ill meaning, he bottled his words and strung his bow in silence. Twice he shot, but neither time did he hit the wand, missing it the first time by a span, and the second time by a good palm's breadth. Robin laughed and laughed. "I see now," quoth he, "that the devil himself could not hit that mark. Good fellow, if thou art no better with the broadsword than thou art with the bow and arrow, thou wilt never overcome Robin Hood." At these words, Guy of Gisbourne glared savagely upon Robin. Quoth he, "Thou hast a merry tongue, thou villain, but take care that thou makest not too free with it, or I may cut it out from thy throat for free." Robin Hood strung his bow and took his place with never a word, albeit his heartstrings quivered with anger and loathing. Twice he shot, the first time hitting within an inch of the wand, the second time splitting it fairly in the middle. Then, without giving the other a chance for speech, he flung his bow upon the ground. "There, thou bloody villain," cried he fiercely, "let that show thee how little thou knowest of manly sports. Now look thy last upon the daylight, for the good earth hath been befouled long enough by thee, thou vile beast. This day, Our Lady willing, thou diest. I am Robin Hood." So saying, he flashed forth his bright sword in the sunlight. For a time, Guy of Gisbourne stared upon Robin as though bereft of wits, but his wonder quickly passed to a wild rage. "Art thou indeed Robin Hood?" cried he. "Now I am glad to meet thee, thou poor wretch. Shriv thyself, for thou wilt have no time for shriving when I am done with thee." So saying, he also drew his sword. And now came the fiercest fight that ever Sherwood saw, for each man knew that either he or the other must die, and that no mercy was to be had in this battle. Up and down they fought, till all the sweet green grass was crushed and ground beneath the trampling of their heels. More than once the point of Robin Hood's sword felt the softness of flesh, and presently the ground began to be sprinkled with bright red drops, albeit not one of them came from Robin's veins. At last, Guy of Gisbourne made a fierce and deadly thrust at Robin Hood, from which he leapt back lightly. But in so leaping, he caught his heel in a root and fell heavily upon his back. "Now, Holy Mary, aid me," muttered he, as the other leapt at him with a grin of rage upon his face. Fiercely, Guy of Gisbourne stabbed at the other with his great sword, but Robin caught the blade in his naked hand, and though it cut his palm, he turned the point away so that it plunged deep into the ground close beside him. Then, ere a blow could be struck again, he leapt to his feet with his good sword in his hand. And now despair fell upon Guy of Gisbourne's heart in a black cloud, as he looked around him wildly like a wounded hawk. Seeing that his strength was going from him, Robin leapt forward, and, quick as a flash, struck a backhanded blow beneath the sword arm. Down fell the sword from Guy of Gisbourne's grasp, and back he staggered at the stroke. And ere he could regain himself, Robin's sword passed through and through his body. round he spun upon his heel, and flinging his hands aloft with a shrill, wild cry, fell prone upon his face, upon the green sod. Wait, he actually gets killed? Wait, I didn't think he was actually gonna get killed. Well, hold on. Let's not do the horse counter yet, because maybe it's a fake out. Maybe he's not dead. Maybe he's not dead. Hold on. Let's see. Hold your dead horses. It could be a fake out. You're vetoing the horse counter? Okay. Let's see what happens. Then Robin Hood wiped his sword and thrust it back into the scabbard, and coming to where Guy of Gisbourne lay, he stood over him with folded arms, talking to himself the while. This is the first man I have slain since I shot the king's forester in the hot days of my youth. I oftentimes think bitterly, even yet, of that first life I took. But of this, I am as glad as though I had slain a wild boar that laid waste to a fair country. Since the Sheriff of Nottingham hath sent such a one as this against me, I will put on the fellow's garb and go forth to see whether I may not find his worship, and perchance pay him back some of the debt I owe him upon this score. So saying, Robin Hood stripped the hairy garments from off the dead man, and put them on himself, all bloody as they were. Then, strapping the other sword and dagger around his body, and carrying his own in his hand, together with the two bows of yew, he drew the cowl of a horse's hide over his face, so that none could tell who he was, and set forth from the forest, turning his steps toward the eastward and Nottingham town. Okay. Is anyone else just picturing him in like a horse onesie though? Like, I know it's not like zippered up or anything, but that's kind of what I'm picturing him in, like a onesie. With the whole like, also this horse onesie would smell so bad. So bad. Yeah, no, the horse head is like attached to the skin, but I'm picturing like him using like sleeves, like the horse legs as sleeves. Yeah, his head would be coming out of the neck, but then the skin of the horse head could like go over like a big hood. Like an Udi with a horse's head. You're picturing a horse fursuit? Yeah. Is Guy of Gisbourne like the OG furry? Is that... do you think? Is he the OG brony? Hi, Diomedes. You gotta be a man to wear tights. Hell yeah. Diomedes, how... are you done with the Nutcracker? How'd it go? Why is Guy of Gisbourne the herald of Faolkor's channel? I beg your pardon? How is he the herald of my channel? One of those rubber horse head masks. Oh. A pre-brony, yeah. Yeah. Because he's an older character than Gulliver, who could also be considered a brony of yore. Okay. As he strode along the country roads, men... As he strode along the country roads, men, women, and children hid away from him, for the terror of Guy of Gisbourne's name and of his doings had spread far and near. Oh yay, that's awesome, Diomedes. So glad to hear that. And now, let us see what befell Little John while these things were happening. Little John walked on his way through the forest paths until he had come to the outskirts of the woodlands, where, here and there, fields of barley, corn, or green meadowlands lay smiling in the sun. So he came to the high road and to where a little thatched cottage stood, back of a cluster of twisted crab trees, with flowers in front of it. Here he stopped of a sudden, for he thought that he heard the sound of someone in sorrow. He listened, and found that it came from the cottage, so, turning his footsteps thither, he pushed open the wicket and entered the place. Oh my god, the draconic author? Bitch, I'm the draconic author. No, I'm so sorry. Welcome in. Hello. Who art thou? Welcome. I know, like, what do you mean? I just, like, my alter ego just followed this channel. Hello. It is lovely to have you here. Thank you so much for the follow. And entered the place. There he saw a gray-haired dame sitting beside a cold hearthstone, rocking herself to and fro and weeping bitterly. Now, Little John had a tender heart for the sorrows of other folk, so, coming to the old woman and patting her kindly upon the shoulder, he spoke comforting words to her, bidding her cheer up and tell him her troubles, for that mayhap he might do something to ease them. At all this the good dame shook her head, but all the same his kind words did soothe her somewhat. So after a while she told him all that bore upon her mind. That morning she had 3 as fair tall sons beside her as one could find in all Nottinghamshire, but that they were now taken from her and were like to be hanged straightway, that, want having come upon them, her eldest boy had gone out the night before into the forest, and had slain a hind in the moonlight, that the king's rangers had followed the blood upon the grass until they had come to her cottage, and had there found the deer's meat in the cupboard, that, as neither of her younger sons would betray their brother, the foresters had taken all 3 away, in spite of the oldest saying that he alone had slain the deer, that, as they went, she had heard the rangers talking among themselves, saying that the sheriff had sworn that he would put a check upon the great slaughter of deer that had been going on of late, by hanging the very first rogue caught thereat upon the nearest tree, and that they would take the 3 youths to the King's Head Inn near Nottingham town, where the sheriff was abiding that day, there to await the return of a certain fellow he had sent into Sherwood to seek for Robin Hood. Oh man, Connor, hope you have an okay day. That is brutal to take all of them. What? I forgot to take this down. How unsightly that was. To all this, Little John listened, shaking his head sadly now and then. Alas, quoth he, when the good dame had finished her speech, This is indeed an ill case. But who is this that goeth into Sherwood after Robin Hood, and why doth he go to seek him? But no matter for that now, only that I would that Robin Hood were here to advise us. Nevertheless, no time may be lost in sending for him at this hour, if we would save the lives of thy 3 sons. Tell me, hast thou any clothes hereabout that I may put on in place of these of Lincoln Green? Marry, if our stout sheriff catcheth me without disguise, I am like to be run up more quickly than thy sons, let me tell thee, dame. Hey, Wheel, thank you for gifting a sub to Bat Hole. How does that exist? Yeah, how incredibly random. Though I almost said Bathoey. I'm Metal XT. Oh my god, Metal, how are you? Then the old woman told him that she had in the house some of the clothes of her good husband, who had died only 2 years before. These she brought to Little John, who, doffing his garb of Lincoln Green, put them on in its stead. Then, making a wig and false beard of uncarded wool, he covered his own brown hair and beard, and, putting on a great tall hat that had belonged to the old peasant, he took a staff in one hand and his bow in the other, and set forth with all speed to where the sheriff had taken up his inn. A mile or more from Nottingham town, and not far from the southern borders of Sherwood Forest, stood the cozy inn bearing the sign of the King's Head. Here was a great bustle and stir on this bright morning, for the sheriff and a score of his men had come to stop there and await Guy of Gisbourne's return from the forest. Great hiss and fuss of cooking was going on in the kitchen, and great rapping and tapping of wine kegs and beer barrels was going on in the cellar. The sheriff sat within, feasting merrily of the best the place afforded, and the sheriff's men sat upon the bench before the door, quaffing ale, or lay beneath the shade of the broad-spreading oak trees, talking and jesting and laughing. All around stood the horses of the band, with a great noise of stamping feet and a great switching of tails. To this inn came the king's rangers, driving the widow's 3 sons before them. The hands of the 3 youths were tied tightly behind their backs, and a cord from neck to neck fastened them all together. So they were marched to the room where the sheriff sat at meat, and stood trembling before him as he scowled sternly upon them. "So," quoth he in a great, loud, angry voice, "ye have been poaching upon the king's deer, have you? Now, I will make short work of you this day, for I will hang up all 3 of you, as a farmer would hang up 3 crows, to scare others of the kind from the field. Our fair county of Nottingham hath been too long a breeding place for such naughty knaves as ye are. I've put up with these things for many years, but now I will stamp them out once for all, and with you I will begin." Good night, bitch. Good night, good night. The sheriff has such a complex at this point. Then one of the poor fellows opened his mouth to speak, but the sheriff roared at him in a loud voice to be silent, and bade the rangers to take them away till he had done his eating and could attend to the matters concerning them. So the 3 poor youths were marched outside, where they stood with bowed heads and despairing hearts, till after a while the sheriff came forth. Hi, Red Boy. You absolutely can. Hello, hello. Then he called his men about him, and quoth he, "These 3 villains shall be hanged straightway, but not here, lest they breed ill luck to this goodly inn. We will take them over yonder to that belt of woodlands, for I would fain hang them upon the very trees of Sherwood itself, to show those vile outlaws therein what they may expect of me, if I ever have the good luck to lay hands upon them." Can you guys hear those sirens? Might just wait for this to finish. That's the sheriff. He's coming.
Oh, bless you.
So saying, he mounted his horse, as did his men-at-arms likewise, and all together they set forth for the belt of woodlands he had spoken of, the poor youths walking in their midst, guarded by the rangers. So they came at last to the spot, and here nooses were fastened around the necks of the 3, and the ends of the cords flung over the branch of a great oak tree that stood there. Then the 3 youths fell upon their knees and loudly besought mercy of the sheriff. But the Sheriff of Nottingham laughed scornfully. "Now," quoth he, "I would that I had a priest here to shrive you. But is it shriv or shrive? Is it shrive? It might be shrive.
Shrive.
It's shrive. Is shrive? Oh, okay. I would that I had a priest here to shrive you. But as none is nigh, you must e'en travel your road with all your sins packed upon your backs, and trust to St. Peter to let you in through the gates of paradise, like 3 peddlers into the town." Yeah, but isn't that pronounced shriven? Or is that shriven? This is one of those words that no one actually ever, like, I don't think I've, don't just spell it the way it's, oh my god.
Shriven.
It's shriven. Okay, this is one of those words that I think I've only ever just, like, read in my head and pronounced it shriven. Okay, it's shriven. Well, today I learned. Yeah, like, drive driven, so why shriven? Google's full of shit, are you sure?
Shriven.
This is saying shriven. Let's open up Cambridge Dictionary.
Shriven.
Oh?
Shriven.
Shriven. Wait, so I have been correct about shriven, but then I just made the incorrect assumption that then it would be shriv instead of shrive. Okay. Okay.
Shriven.
Okay. The OED says shriven as well. Okay, it's shriven, but shrive. Good. I'm glad we learned that. And by we, I mean me. And maybe some of you. They had one, the Cambridge Dictionary had both UK and US, and it was both shriven, so. Yeah, I've never heard them out loud, but in my head I've pronounced it shriven. So I guess I just went for shriv, but then I was like, this looks like shrive. Okay, anyway, we know now. We know now. Nice. Wait. Hold on. Banana, you gifted a sub to Red Boy? Wait. You gifted a sub to Red Boy? Thank you. Thank you, thank you. He's from Newey. I don't know what that means. Newark? New something? Newcastle? But there's a lot of place names that start with new. Like a lot. Like a lot of them. Okay? And I've never heard any of them referred to as Newey. But theoretically any of them could be nicknamed Newey. Okay, let's see what happens next. This is brutal though. He's like hanging 3 children and won't even let them talk to a priest. How many places are nicknamed Newey? I mean, I didn't know of any, so theoretically there could be loads that I just don't know of. So. You've heard it as Nuki? Oh, Newcastle in Australia. I didn't even know there was a Newcastle in Australia. I know there's a Newcastle in the UK and I think in the States as well. And probably several other. There's probably a lot of places called Newcastle. That just feels like a name that would be around a lot of places. Thought you were talking about the island named... Is that also pronounced Newey? Hi, Charlie. No one does. I'm sorry. Now I know. There's 3 in the UK, right? It's a burger place in the US? Okay. And it's a K-pop girl group. So you understand the confusion. Oh, that's a White Castle is the burger place. Okay. I'm just assuming you probably have somewhere called Newcastle in the States because you have a lot of UK place names brought over. I mean, as do we. There's a Miami and Oklahoma. Dang, that's confusing, probably. But like the main Newcastle in England it's northern, right? Is it a northern city? Paris, Texas. Oh man. And there's Newcastle upon Tyne. Yes, yes. I've also heard... Have I been there? I don't know if I've been there, but I am also aware of Newcastle upon Tyne, right? Okay. Alright. Anyways. Well, that is awesome that you're joining us all the way from Australia. It would be like, yeah, difficult to be in a place where, like, I always feel that way for people from like London, Ontario, you know, to say you're from London. Everyone's all like, wow, London. It's like, oh, Ontario. Yeah, Newcastle upon Tyne is south, right? Is it south? There is Vancouver, Washington, but I would argue that Vancouver, BC is the main Vancouver. Is Newcastle upon Tyne? It's north? Wait, what? Is it? It's northeast. Oh, okay. But it's not the main Newcastle? Okay. Well, I was wrong about that one. You guys, this is not an official break, but my back is actually really hurting and I need to briefly stand up. This is not an official break, okay, but I need to stand. I'm hurting. Hold on a sec. Hold on a sec. Hello. You didn't think the guy of Gisbourne chapter would be so stout? Bro, the whole book has been very stout. I was stretching, but also ate a piece of chocolate. Okay. Your pizza is 4 minutes away. Hell yeah. Okay. Let's jump back in. Hi, bees. Just stay awake for the card reading. Wait, DJ, I think we're going to be doing that on Sunday night. So please feel free to go to bed whenever you need to. Let me do that on Sunday. Yeah. Is your sleep schedule still off? Oh yeah, DJ, are you still getting back to normal? Does Faolkor have to distinguish which things are official breaks to stay on the right side of the Labor Relations Board? I don't know why I had to distinguish that. I don't know. Okay, let's jump back in. Sorry, guys. In the meantime, while all this had been going forward, an old man had drawn near and stood leaning on his staff, looking on. His hair and beard were all curly and white, and across his back was a bow of yew that looked much too strong for him to draw. As the sheriff looked around ere he ordered his men to string the 3 youths up to the oak tree, his eyes fell upon this strange old man. Then his worship beckoned to him, saying, "Come hither, father. I have a few words to say to thee." So, Little John, for it was none other than he, came forward, and the sheriff looked upon him, thinking that there was something strangely familiar in the face before him. "How now?" said he. "Methinks I have seen thee before. What may thy name be, father?" "Please, your worship," said Little John in a cracked voice, like that of an old man, "my name is Giles Hobble, at your worship's service." Giles Hobble, muttered the sheriff to himself, turning over the names that he had in his mind to try to find one to fit to this. "I remember not thy name," said he at last, "but it matters not. Hast thou a mind to earn 6 this bright morn?" "Aye, marry," quoth Little John, "for money is not so plenty with me that I should cast 6 away, and I could earn it by an honest turn. What is it your worship would have me do?" "Why, this," said the sheriff. "Here are 3 men that need hanging as badly as any e'er I saw. If thou wilt string them up, I will pay thee 2 apiece for them. I like not that my men-at-arms should turn hangmen. Wilt thou try thy hand?" "Oh, in sooth," said Little John, still in the old man's voice, "I had never done such a thing before. But an a 6 is to be earned so easily, I might as well have it as anybody. But, your worship, are these naughty fellows shrived?" "Nay," said the sheriff, laughing, "never a whit. But thou mayest turn thy hand to that also, if thou art so minded. But hasten, I prithee, for I would get back to mine inn betimes." So Little John came to where the 3 youths stood trembling, and putting his face to the first fellow's cheek, as though he were listening to him, he softly whispered into his ear, "Stand still, brother, when thou feelest thy bonds cut. But when thou seest me throw my woolen wig and beard from my head and face, cast the noose from thy neck, and run for the woodlands." Then he slyly cut the cord that bound the youth's hands, who, upon his part, stood still, as though he were yet bound. Then he went to the second fellow and spoke to him in the same way, and also cut his bonds. This he did to the third likewise, but all so slyly that the sheriff, who sat upon his horse, laughing, wotted not what was being done, nor his men either. Then Little John turned to the sheriff. "Please, your worship," said he, "will you give me leave to string my bow? For I would fain help these fellows along the way, when they are swinging, with an arrow beneath the ribs." "With all my heart," said the sheriff, "only, as I said before, make thou haste in thy doings." Hi, Odd Aussie Gamer. Hi, Aussie. I mean, it's almost too perfect, right? How does the sheriff not recognize him? Like, I know he's got like a fake beard on and everything, but like, this dude lived in your house for 6 months, became your like favorite sidekick, then betrayed you and you found out that it was Robin Hood's bestie. How is that face not burned into your memory? Yeah, we do have a lot of Aussies here. Oh, thank you, Aussie. His face blindness, maybe. Little John put the tip of his bow to his instep and strung the weapon so deftly that all wondered to see an old man so strong. Next, he drew a good smooth arrow from his quiver and fitted it to the string. Then, looking all around to see that the way was clear behind him, he suddenly cast away the wool from his head and face, shouting in a mighty voice, "Run!" Quick as a flash, the three youths flung the nooses from their necks and sped across the open to the woodlands as the arrow speeds from the bow. Little John also flew toward the covert like a greyhound, while the sheriff and his men gazed after him, all bewildered with the sudden doing. But ere the yeoman had gone far, the sheriff roused himself. "After him!" he roared in a mighty voice, for he knew now who it was with whom he had been talking, and wondered that he had not known him before. Little John heard the sheriff's words, and seeing that he could not hope to reach the woodlands before they would be upon him, he stopped and turned suddenly, holding his bow as though he were about to shoot. "Stand back!" cried he fiercely. "The first man that cometh a foot forward, or toucheth finger to bowstring, dieth." I will thank you for the gift sub to Brony Dragon. At these words, the sheriff's men stood as still as stalks, for they knew right well that Little John would be as good as his word, and that to disobey him meant death. In vain the sheriff roared at them, calling them cowards and urging them forward in a body. They would not budge an inch, but stood and watched Little John as he moved slowly away toward the forest, keeping his gaze fixed upon them. But when the sheriff saw his enemy thus slipping betwixt his fingers, he grew mad with rage, so that his head swam and he knew not what he did. Then, of a sudden, he turned his horse's head and, plunging the spurs into its sides, he gave a great shout and, rising in his stirrups, came down upon Little John like the wind. Then Little John raised his deadly bow and drew the grey goose feather to his cheek. But, alas for him, for ere he could loose the shaft, the good bow that had served him so long split in his hands, and the arrow fell harmless at his feet. Seeing what had happened, the sheriff's men raised a shout, and following their master, came rushing down upon Little John. But the sheriff was ahead of the others, and so caught up with the yeoman before he reached the shelter of the woodlands. Then, leaning forward, he struck a mighty blow. Little John ducked, and the sheriff's sword turned in his hand, but the flat of the blade struck the other upon the head and smote him down, stunned and senseless. Hi, Luna. Hello. How's it going? Yeah, the inlay, I guess. Weakened the bow. Oh, Ozzy. Well, thank you for that 3-stream streak. Your streak got ruined? From what? What happened? Aw, Ozzy. It's okay. Buddha, good night. Good night, good night. Sleep well. Yeah, I need Robin dressed up in a horse onesie to just burst out of the thicket right now. I didn't break it. Now, I am right glad, said the sheriff, when the men came up and found that Little John was not dead, that I have not slain this man in my haste. I would rather lose 500 pounds than have him die thus, instead of hanging, as such a vile thief should do. Go, get some water from yonder fountain, William, and pour it over his head. The man did as he was bidden, and presently Little John opened his eyes and looked around him, all dazed and bewildered with the stun of the blow. Then they tied his hands behind him and, lifting him up, set him upon the back of one of the horses, with his face to its tail, and his feet strapped beneath its belly. Oh! No, he is on its back, sorry. I was thinking that he was underneath the horse, with his head coming up around the booty. He's lying like this, okay? But his legs are tied underneath. I thought they had him like this. Either way, his face is in a horse's ass, but that's not as bad. You have a prop? Yes. That's what this is. This is just a prop. I don't just own this model horse for enjoyment reasons. It's only for educational prop reasons. He thought he was giving the horse the old Gulliver special. I thought they were like keel hauling him under the horse. Just dragging him. Lee. Gumpatch. Sounds good. Nay, hauling him. Okay. Wrong pants. It's okay. It's okay. Sleep well, though. Alright. So they took him back to the King's Head Inn, laughing and rejoicing as they went along. But, in the meantime, the widow's 3 sons had gotten safely away, and were hidden in the woodlands. DJ, are you okay? Are you okay? Even if you didn't actually break your ankle, grab some ice, put some ice on it, okay? Once more, the Sheriff of Nottingham sat within the King's Head Inn. His heart rejoiced within him, for he had at last done that which he had sought to do for years. Taken Little John prisoner. Quoth he to himself, "This time tomorrow the rogue shall hang upon the gallows tree in front of the great gate of Nottingham town, and thus shall I make my long score with him even." Hi, Chompy. Sleep well. Oh my god, DJ. Yeah, go put some ice on it. Yeah. Elevate it as well. So saying, he took a deep draught of canary, but it seemed as if the sheriff had swallowed a thought with his wine, for he shook his head and put the cup down hastily. Now, he muttered to himself, well, I would not for 1,000 pounds have this fellow slip through my fingers. Yet, should his master escape that foul guy of Gisbourne, there is no knowing what he may do, for he is the cunningest knave in all the world, the same Robin Hood. Belike I'd better not wait until tomorrow to hang the fellow. So saying, he pushed his chair back hastily, and going forth from the inn, called his men together. Quoth he, I will wait no longer for the hanging of this rogue, but it shall be done forthwith. And that from the very tree whence he saved those 3 young villains by stepping betwixt them and the law. So, get ye ready straightway. Then, once more, they sat Little John upon the horse, with his face to the tail, and so, one leading the horse whereon he sat, and the others riding around him, they went forward to that tree, from the branches of which they had thought to hang the poachers. On they went, rattling and jingling along the road till they came to the tree. Here, one of the men spake to the sheriff of a sudden. Your worship, cried he, is not yon fellow coming toward us that same guy of Gisbourne, whom thou didst send into the forest to seek Robin Hood? At these words, the sheriff shaded his eyes and looked eagerly. Buddha, wake up and go to bed. Buddha, you've fallen asleep on your keyboard. Buddha. Or close the app, or Buddha, go sleep. I don't have Brenda out. Brenda's in the box. Buddha does own a cat, actually. So this could be a sleeping Buddha message, or this could be a Buddha cat message. Actually, Buddha has like a gorgeous cat. You should nag him for cat photos. It might be the cat.
Hi, puss. Hello, puss. Kitty. Hello. Abu.
At these words, the sheriff shaded his eyes and looked eagerly. Why, certes, quoth he. Wait, certes? Why does that feel like modern slang? Instead of saying, like, certain. Certes, bitches. Why, certes, quoth he. Yon fellow is the same. For certes. Now, heaven send that he hath slain the master thief, as we will presently slay the man. Oh, it's Latin and pronounced certes? Well, that's... No. Wrong. Definitely just certs. Why, certes? Well, obviously it means certainly. Obviously. Why, certes, quoth he. Yon fellow is the same. Now, heaven send that he hath slain the master thief, as we will presently slay the man. Stop trying to make certs happen. When Little John heard this speech, he looked up, and straightway his heart crumbled away within him, for not only were the man's garments all covered with blood, but he wore Robin Hood's bugle horn and carried his bow and broadsword. Oh my god! Thank you for gifting a sub to Buddhist Cat. Oh my god. How now? Cried the sheriff, when Robin Hood, in Guy of Gisbourne's clothes, had come nigh to them. What luck hath befallen thee in the forest? Why, man, thy clothes are all over blood. And thou likest not my clothes, said Robin, in a harsh voice like that of Guy of Gisbourne. Thou mayst shut thine eyes. Marry, the blood upon me is that of the vilest outlaw that ever trod the woodlands, and one of whom I have slain this day, albeit not without wound to myself. Then out spake Little John, for the first time since he had fallen into the sheriff's hands. Oh, thy vile, bloody wretch! I know thee, Guy of Gisbourne. For who is there that hath not heard of thee and cursed thee for thy vile deeds of blood and rapine? Am I pronouncing that right? Rapine? Rapine? Rapine. Yeah. Rapine. Rapine. Okay, so the emphasis is on the first syllable though. I'm guessing it's from the same root word as rape. Of the old meaning, it's to seize things, to take things. Yeah? Okay. Hi, Brawl. Your own spine is feeling the weather change lurking tonight. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Brawl, but thank you for the lurk. Thank you for the lurk. I hope you feel better soon. Okay. For thy vile deeds of blood and rapine, is it by such a hand as thine that the gentlest heart that ever beat is stilled in death? Truly, thou art a fit tool for this coward Sheriff of Nottingham. Now I die joyfully, nor do I care how I die, for life is naught to me. So spake Little John, the salt tears rolling down his brown cheeks. There are some medieval English court cases about the rape of a lady where it's referring to her being hired away from her. Yeah, I mean, probably... I mean, I definitely remember the first time learning that that word had a different meaning, and it was in, like, high school literature class. We read the poem The Rape of the Lock, which is about, like, a boy, like, stealing a lock of hair from a girl that he has a crush on. So, yeah, it had a very different meaning. Yeah. Will I sing Jingle Bells? I don't know about that. Okay. But the Sheriff of Nottingham clapped his hands for joy. Now, Guy of Gisbourne, cried he, if what thou tellest me is true, it will be the best day's doings for thee that ever thou hast done in all thy life. What I have told thee is sooth, and I lie not, said Robin, still in Guy of Gisbourne's voice. Look, is this not Robin Hood's sword? And is this not his good bow of yew? And is this not his bugle horn? thinkest thou he would have given them to Guy of Gisbourne of his own free will? We were not allowed or had such things in our textbooks? No, it's just a poem about a boy stealing a lock of hair from a girl. We learned British English? That is in British English. It's a British poem. It's by Alexander Pope. Anyway. It was written in the 1700s. Yeah, but in this context, the word doesn't have a foul meaning. Right. Yeah. I mean, we honestly, like, reading this book here is a great example of how words have changed. Like, we've had this conversation a few times throughout reading Robin Hood, right? Because talking about how every man is lusty. Everyone is so freaking lusty. And it just means, like, healthy and energetic in this context, right? Words have changed over time, and yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then the sheriff laughed aloud for joy. "This is a good day," cried he. "The great outlaw dead, and his right-hand man in my hands. Oh, ask what thou wilt of me, Guy of Gisbourne, and it is thine." "Then I ask of thee," said Robin, "as I have slain the master, I would now kill the man. Give this fellow's life into my hands, Sir Sheriff." "Now thou art a fool," cried the sheriff. "Thou mightst have had money enough for a night's ransom, if thou hadst asked for it. I like ill to let this fellow pass from my hands, but, as I have promised, thou shalt have him." "I thank thee right heartily for thy gift," cried Robin. "Take the rogue down from the horsemen, and lean him against yonder tree, while I show you how we stick a porker whence I come." At these words, some of the sheriff's men shook their heads, but though they cared not a whit whether Little John were hanged or not, they hated to see him butchered in cold blood. But the sheriff called to them in a loud voice, ordering them to take the yeoman down from the horse and lean him against the tree, as the other bade. While they were doing this, Robin Hood strung both his bow and that of Guy of Gisbourne, albeit none of them took notice of his doing so. Then, when Little John stood against the tree, he drew Guy of Gisbourne's sharp, double-edged dagger. "Fall back! Fall back!" cried he. "Would ye crowd so on my pleasure, ye unmannerly knaves? Back, I say! Farther yet!" So they crowded back, as he ordered, many of them turning their faces away, that they might not see what was about to happen. "Come," cried Little John, "here is my breast. It is meet that the same hand that slew my dear master should butcher me also. I know thee, Guy of Gisbourne." "Peace, Little John," said Robin in a low voice. "Twice thou hast said thou knowest me, and yet thou knowest me not at all. Couldst thou not tell me beneath this wild beast's hide? Yonder, just in front of thee, lie my bow and arrows, likewise my broadsword. take them when I cut thy bonds. Now, get them quickly. So saying, he cut the bonds, and Little John, quick as a wink, leapt forward and caught up the bow and arrows and the broadsword. At the same time, Robin Hood threw back the cowl of horse's hide from his face and bent Guy of Gisbourne's bow with a keen, barbed arrow fit to the string. "Stand back!" cried he sternly. "The first man that toucheth finger to bowstring dieth. I have slain thy man, Sheriff. Take heed that it is not thy turn next." Then, seeing that Little John had armed himself, he clapped his bugle horn to his lips and blew 3 blasts, both loud and shrill. Now, when the Sheriff of Nottingham saw whose face it was beneath Guy of Gisbourne's hood, and when he heard those bugle notes ring in his ear, he felt as if his hour had come. "Robin Hood!" roared he, and without another word he wheeled his horse in the road and went off in a cloud of dust. The sheriff's men, seeing their master thus fleeing for his life, thought that it was not their business to tarry longer, so, clapping spurs to their horses, they also dashed away after him. But though the Sheriff of Nottingham went fast, he could not outstrip a cloth-yard arrow. Little John twanged his bowstring with a shout, and when the sheriff dashed in through the gates of Nottingham town at full speed, a grey goose shaft stuck out behind him like a molting sparrow with one feather in its tail. For a month afterward, the poor sheriff could sit upon naught but the softest cushions that could be gotten for him. Oh no! He stuck his shaft in the sheriff's butt. He literally did. He got shot in the butt. Butt shots. Oh, these lusty young men. Thus the sheriff and a score of men ran away from Robin Hood and Little John, so that when Will Stutely and a dozen or more of stout yeomen burst from out the covert, they saw naught of their master's enemies, for the sheriff and his men were scurrying away in the distance, hidden within a cloud of dust, like a little thunderstorm. Then they all went back into the forest once more, where they found the widow's 3 sons, who ran to Little John and kissed his hands. But it would not do for them to roam the forest at large any more, so they promised that, after they had gone and told their mother of their escape, they would come that night to the greenwood tree, and thenceforth become men of the band. End of chapter. Hi, Timmer Squanch. Hello. Damn. I would feel sorry for the sheriff if he wasn't such a dick. Okay, there is 1 chapter left in this book, and then an epilogue, which is probably quite short. We are going to finish this tonight. I'm going to take a couple minutes to stretch, and then we're going to finish that, okay? The next chapter is called King Richard Comes to Sherwood Forest, so that's pretty exciting. Alright, I'll see you guys in just a few minutes. Are you guys switching words for this chapter? Or are you sticking with stout? Hey, Casey. DJ, yeah, how's your ankle doing? What's that though? You okay? What's happening? Honey, are you okay? Okay. This is a long chapter. Oh man. I'm trying to sit on this cushion, but it's not really made for sitting on. Okay. All right. King Richard comes to Sherwood Forest. Not more than 2 months had passed and gone since these stirring adventures befell Robin Hood and Little John, when all Nottinghamshire was a mighty stir and tumult. For King Richard of the Lion's Heart was making a royal progress through merry England, and everyone expected him to come to Nottingham town in his journeying. Messengers went riding back and forth between the sheriff and the king, until at last the time was fixed upon when His Majesty was to stop in Nottingham as the guest of his worship. And now came more bustle than ever, a great running hither and thither, a rapping of hammers and a babble of voices sounded everywhere through the place. For the folk were building great arches across the streets, beneath which the king was to pass, and were draping these arches with silken banners and streamers of many colors. Great hubbub was going on in the guild hall of the town also, for here a grand banquet was to be given to the king and the nobles of his train, and the best master carpenters were busy building a throne where the king and the sheriff were to sit at the head of the table, side by side. It seemed to many of the good folk of the place as if the day that should bring the king into the town would never come. But all the same it did come in its own season, and bright shone the sun down into the stony streets, which were all alive with a restless sea of people. On either side of the way, great crowds of town and country folk stood packed as close together as dried herring in a box, so that the sheriff's men, halberds in hands, could hardly press them back to leave space for the king's riding. "Take care whom thou pushest against," cried a great burly friar to one of these men. "Wouldst thou dig thine elbows into me, sirrah? By Our Lady of the Fountain, and thou dost not treat me with more deference, I will crack thy knave's pate for thee, even though thou be one of the mighty sheriff's men." At this, a great shout of laughter arose from a number of tall yeomen in Lincoln green that were scattered through the crowd thereabouts. But one that seemed of more authority than the others nudged the holy man with his elbow. "Peace, Tuck," said he. "Didst thou not promise me, ere thou camest here, that thou wouldst put a check upon thy tongue?" "Ay, marry," grumbled the other, "but I did not think to have a hard-footed knave trample all over my poor toes as though they were no more than so many acorns in the forest." But of a sudden all this bickering ceased, for a clear sound of many bugle horns came winding down the street. Then all the people craned their necks and gazed in the direction whence the sound came, and the crowding and the pushing and the swaying grew greater than ever. And now a gallant array of men came gleaming into sight, and the cheering of the men ran down the crowd as the fire runs in dry grass. 28 heralds in velvet and cloth of gold came riding forward. Over their heads fluttered a cloud of snow-white feathers, and each herald bore in his hand a long silver trumpet, which he blew musically. From each trumpet hung a heavy banner of velvet and cloth of gold, with the royal arms of England emblazoned thereon. After these came riding 50 noble knights, 2 by 2, all fully armed, saving that their heads were uncovered. In their hands they bore tall lances, from the tops of which fluttered pennons of many colors and devices. By the side of each knight walked a page, clad in rich clothes of silk and velvet, and each page bore in his hands his master's helmet, from which waved long, floating plumes of feathers. Never had Nottingham seen a fairer sight than those 50 noble knights, from whose armor the sun blazed in dazzling light as they came riding on their great war horses, with clashing of arms and jingling of chains. Behind the knights came the barons and the nobles of the mid-country, in robes of silk and cloth of gold, with golden chains about their necks and jewels at their girdles. Behind these again came a great array of men-at-arms, with spears and halberds in their hands, and in the midst of these, 2 riders, side by side. One of the horsemen was the Sheriff of Nottingham, in his robes of office. The other, who was a head taller than the sheriff, was clad in a rich but simple garb, with a broad, heavy chain about his neck. The hair and beard were like threads of gold, and his eyes were as blue as the summer sky. As he rode along, he bowed to the right hand and the left, and a mighty roar of voices followed him as he passed, for this was King Richard. Then, above all the tumult and shouting, a great voice was heard roaring, "Heaven, its saints bless thee, our gracious King Richard! And likewise our Lady of the Fountain, bless thee!" Then King Richard, looking toward the spot whence the sound came, saw a tall, burly, strapping priest standing in front of all the crowd with his legs wide apart as he backed against those behind. What happened to King Henry? He died. Yeah. It just said at the beginning of the last chapter, it's like, a lot's happened since the last story, including King Henry died. I didn't do anything. By my soul, Sheriff, said the king, laughing, you have the tallest priests in Nottinghamshire that e'er I saw in all my life. Well, if heaven never answered prayers because of deafness, methinks I would nevertheless have blessings bestowed upon me. For that man yonder would make the great stone image of St. Peter rub its ears and hearken unto him. I would that I had such an army. I would that I had an army of such as he. To this, the sheriff answered never a word, but all the blood left his cheeks, and he caught at the pommel of his saddle to keep himself from falling. For he also saw the fellow that so shouted, and knew him to be Friar Tuck. And, moreover, behind Friar Tuck, he saw the faces of Robin Hood, and Little John, and Will Scarlet, and Will Stutely, and Alan a Dale, and others of the band. Well, how now? Said the king hastily. Art thou ill, sheriff, that thou growest so white? Nay, your majesty, said the sheriff, it was not but a sudden pain that will soon pass by. Thus he spake, for he was ashamed that the king should know that Robin Hood feared him so little that he thus dared to come within the very gates of Nottingham town. Hey, Waxtooth. Thus rode the king into Nottingham town on that bright afternoon in the early fall season, and none rejoiced more than Robin Hood and his merry men to see him come so royally unto his own. Eventide had come. The great feast in the Guildhall at Nottingham town was done, and the wine passed freely. 1,000 waxen lights gleamed along the board, at which lord and noble and knight and squire in goodly array, at which sat lord and noble and knight and squire in goodly array. At the head of the table, upon a throne all hung with cloth of gold, sat King Richard, with the Sheriff of Nottingham beside him. Henry was dead to begin with. Dead as a doornail. Yeah. Quoth the king to the sheriff, laughing as he spoke, I've heard much spoken concerning the doings of certain fellows hereabouts, one Robin Hood and his band, who are outlaws and abide in Sherwood forest. Canst thou not tell me somewhat of them, Sir Sheriff? For I hear that thou hast had dealings with them more than once. At these words, the Sheriff of Nottingham looked down gloomily, and the Bishop of Hereford, who was present, gnawed his nether lip. Quoth the Sheriff, I can tell your Majesty but little concerning the doings of those naughty fellows, saving that they are the boldest lawbreakers in all the land. Then up spake young Sir Henry of the Lee, a great favourite with the king, under whom he had fought in Palestine. May it please your Majesty, said he, when I was away in Palestine, I heard oft-times from my father, and in most cases I heard of this very fellow, Robin Hood. If your Majesty would like, I will tell you a certain adventure of this outlaw. Oh, this is Richard's son. Richard of the Lee is the knight that is friends with Robin Hood. Where's the nether lip? Then the king laughingly bade him tell his tale, whereupon he told how Robin Hood had aided Sir Richard of the Lee with money that he had borrowed from the Bishop of Hereford. Again and again, the king and those present roared with laughter, while the poor bishop waxed cherry red in the face with vexation, for the matter was a sore thing with him. When Sir Henry of the Lee was done, others of those present, seeing how the king enjoyed this merry tale, told other tales concerning Robin and his merry men. By the hilt of my sword, said stout King Richard, this is as bold and merry a knave as ever I heard tell of. Marry, I must take this matter in hand and do what thou couldst not do, Sheriff, to wit, clear the forest of him and his band. Damn it, the king's like, wow, I love these stories, I better kill this guy. That night, the king sat in the place that was set apart for his lodging. Let me read that sentence again. That night, the king sat in the place that was set apart for his lodging while in Nottingham town. With him were young Sir Henry of the Lee, and 2 other knights, and 3 barons of Nottinghamshire. But the king's mind still dwelled upon Robin Hood. Now, quoth he, I would freely give 100 pounds to meet this roguish fellow, Robin Hood, and to see somewhat of his doings in Sherwood forest. Then up spake Sir Hubert of Gingham, laughing. Sir Hubert of Gingham? Does he just, wear a lot of gingham? What a weird name. Like, most of the time, people are named after well, we see them sometimes being named after the place they're from. Like, no, gingham's not a place. No, and it's not capitalized. It's a fabric. Sometimes you do, like, we had that one guy, someone of the crab staff, right? So sometimes their name is like after, I don't know, something about how they look or something they carry. But this is a knight. I thought that was more of like a peasanty thing, you know? Because this knight surely has like land holdings and everything. I wonder why he's Sir Hubert of Gingham. Yeah, gingham is like that checked fabric, like Dorothy wears. However, it is possible that at this time, gingham was a really nice fabric. Such as, like, nowadays we associate corduroy with being like kind of this usually unfashionable fabric, but corduroy literally comes from the French corde du roi, which means cloth of the king. Like, it was a hoity-toity fabric. Corduroy, cloth of the king. Maybe he invented gingham? We don't know. Okay. Then up spake Sir Hubert of Gingham, laughing. If your majesty hath such a desire upon you, it is not so hard to satisfy. If your majesty is willing to lose 100 pounds, I will engage to cause you not only to meet this fellow, but to feast with him in Sherwood. Marry, Sir Hubert, quoth the king, this pleaseth me well. But how wilt thou cause me to meet Robin Hood? Why, thus, said Sir Hubert. Let your majesty and us here present put on the robes of 7 of the Order of Black Friars, and let your majesty hang a purse of 100 pounds beneath your gown. Then let us undertake to ride from here to Mansfield Town tomorrow, and without I am much mistaken, we will both meet with Robin Hood and dine with him before the day be past. I like thy plan, Sir Hubert, quoth the king merrily, and tomorrow we will try it, and see whether there be virtue in it. So it happened that when early the next morning the sheriff came to where his liege lord was abiding, to pay his duty to him, the king told him what they had talked of the night before, and what merry adventure they were set upon undertaking that morning. But when the sheriff heard this, he smote his forehead with his fist. Alas, said he, what evil counsel is this that hath been given thee? What evil counsel is this that hath been given thee? O my gracious lord and king, you know not what you do. This villain that you thus go to seek hath no reverence, either for king or king's laws. But did I not hear aright when I was told that this Robin Hood hath shed no blood since he was outlawed, saving only that of that vile Guy of Gisbourne, for whose death all honest men should thank him? Yea, your majesty, said the sheriff, you have heard aright. Nevertheless, then, quoth the king, breaking in on the sheriff's speech, what have I to fear in meeting him, having done him no harm? Truly, there is no danger in this. But mayhap thou wilt go with us, Sir Sheriff. Nay, quoth the sheriff hastily, heaven forbid. But now 7 habits, such as black friars wear, were brought, and the king and those about him having clad themselves therein, and his majesty having hung a purse with 100 golden pounds in it beneath his robes, they all went forth and mounted the mules that had been brought to the door for them. Then the king bade the sheriff be silent as to their doings, and so they set forth upon their way. Onward they travelled, laughing and jesting, until they passed through the open country, between bare harvest fields whence the harvest had been gathered home, through scattered glades that began to thicken as they went farther along, till they came within the heavy shade of the forest itself. They travelled in the forest for several miles without meeting anyone such as they sought, until they had come to that part of the road that lay nearest to Newstead Abbey. Why are you shouting silence at me? Oh. I was like, what the fuck? Am I doing that bad a job? By the holy Saint Martin, quoth the king, I would that I had a better head for remembering things of great need. Well, here we've come away and brought never so much as a drop of anything to drink with us. Now I would give £500 for somewhat to quench my thirst withal. For fuck's sake, Igor. No sooner had the king so spoken than out from the covert at the roadside stepped a tall fellow with a yellow beard and hair and a pair of merry blue eyes. Truly, holy brother, said he, laying his hand upon the king's bridle rein, it were an unchristian thing to not give fitting answer to so fair a bargain. Oh, we keep an inn hereabouts. For £50 we will not only give thee a good draught of wine, but will give thee as noble a feast as ever thou didst tickle thy gullet withal. So saying, he put his fingers to his lips and blew a shrill whistle. Then, straightway, the bushes and branches on either side of the road swayed and crackled, and 80 broad-shouldered yeomen in Lincoln green burst out of the covert. How now, fellow, quoth the king, who art thou, thou naughty rogue? Hast thou no regard for such holy men as we are? Not a whit, quoth merry Robin Hood, for the fellow was he. For in sooth, all the holiness belonging to rich friars, such as ye are, one could drop into a thimble, and the good wife would never feel it with the tip of her finger. As for my name, it is Robin Hood, and thou mayst have heard it before. Now, out upon thee, quoth King Richard, thou art a bold and naughty fellow, and a lawless one withal, as I have often heard tell. Now, prithee, let me and these brethren of mine travel forward in peace and quietness. It may not be, said Robin, for it would look but ill of us to let such holy men travel onward with empty stomachs. But I doubt not that thou hast a fat purse to pay thy score at our inn, since thou offerest freely so much for a poor draught of wine. Show me thy purse, reverend brother, or I may perchance have to strip thy robes from thee to search for it myself. Nay, use no force, said the king sternly. Here is my purse, but lay not thy lawless hands upon our person. Hut, hut, quoth merry Robin, what proud words are these? Art thou the King of England to talk so to me? Here, Will, take this purse and see what there is within. Will Scarlet took the purse and counted out the money. Then Robin bade him keep £50 for themselves, and put 50 back into the purse. This he handed to the king. Here, brother, quoth he, take this half of thy money, and thank Saint Martin, on whom thou didst call before, that thou hast fallen into the hands of such gentle rogues that they will not strip thee bare, as they might do. But wilt thou not put back thy cowl? For I would fain see thy face. Nay, said the king, drawing back, I may not put back my cowl, for we 7 have vowed that we will not show our faces for 24 hours. Then keep them covered in peace, said Robin, and far be it from me to make you break your vows. So he called 7 of his yeomen, and bade them each one take a mule by the bridle. Then, turning their faces toward the depths of the woodlands, they journeyed onward until they came to the open glade, and the greenwood tree. You've missed it here. Glad you're right back in Sherwood. Well, it is good to have you back, Wax Dude. Yeah, you can guzzle a lot of sack for 50 pounds. It's true. It's true. Yeah, I'm assuming the word naughty carried more of a punch back then. Actually, now I'm just wondering. This is all off the top of my head, so this might not be true. Just think about, like, the roots of the word naughty. Obviously, it's got the word not in it. Like, nothing. Does it mean that you're, like, a worthless person? Would that be the root of naughty? Is, like, calling the person worthless? Because they're lawless? I'm totally guessing. That might not be it, but I feel like that makes sense, right? Well, now I need to know. Now I need to know. Naughty, from Middle English, earliest recorded sense was possessing nothing. Yeah. Wait, so it evolved from, originally meant needy or poor? Hold on. No. Let me not trust the AI overview. Let me go to the etymology dictionary. Fuck the AI. So originally, late 14th century, needy or having nothing. Also evil, immoral, corrupt, unclean. I mean, if that doesn't speak volumes, what does? From not, evil, an evil act, nothingness, a trifle, insignificant person, the number 0. The specific meaning of sexually promiscuous is only from 1869. Nice. Whereas the mitigated sense of disobedient, bad in conduct or speech, improper or mischievous, especially if the delinquencies of children, is from the 1630s. Damn. So this correlation, right, between just being poor, having nothing, was basically on par with being worth nothing, with being evil or villainous. And of course there would be a high overlap, there still is a high overlap between poverty and crime, right? But just the moral blaming, there's actually a lot of heavy moral weight in that word that that hadn't occurred to me before. You know? Damn. I love learning. Okay. Right. They journeyed onward until they came to the open glade and the greenwood tree. Little John, with 80 yeomen at his heels, had also gone forth that morning to wait along the roads and bring a rich guest to Sherwood glade, if such might be his luck, for many with fat purses must travel the roads at this time, when such great doings were going on in Nottinghamshire. But though Little John and so many others were gone, Friar Tuck and 20 or more stout yeomen were seated or lying around beneath the great tree, and when Robin and the others came, they leapt to their feet to meet him. "By my soul," quoth merry King Richard, when he had gotten down from his from his mule and stood looking about him. Thou hast in very truth a fine lot of young men about thee, Robin. Methinks King Richard himself would be glad of such a bodyguard. These are not all my fellows, said Robin proudly, for 80 more of them are away on business with my good right-hand man, Little John. But as for King Richard, I tell thee, brother, there is not a man of us all but would pour out our blood like water for him. Ye churchmen cannot rightly understand our king, but we yeomen love him right loyally for the sake of his brave doings, which are so like our own. But now Friar Tuck came bustling up.
"Oh, Gee good den, brothers," said he. "I am right glad to welcome some of my cloth in this naughty place."
A Tuck?
"Truly, methinks these rogues of outlaws would stand but an ill chance, were it not for the prayers of holy Tuck, who laboureth so hard for their well-being."
Here he winked one eye slyly and stuck his tongue into his cheek. "Who art thou, mad priest?" said the king in a serious voice, albeit he smiled beneath his cowl. At this, Friar Tuck looked all around with a slow gaze.
"Look you now," quoth he, "never let me hear you say again that I am no patient man. Here is a knave of a friar calling me a mad priest, and yet I smite him not. My name is Friar Tuck, fellow, the holy Friar Tuck."
"There, Tuck," said Robin, "thou hast said enow. Prithee, cease thy talk and bring some wine. These reverend men are athirst, and since they have paid so richly for their score, they must e'en have the best." Friar Tuck bridled at being so checked in his speech. Nevertheless, he went straightway to do Robin's bidding. So presently a great crock was brought, and wine was poured out for all the guests, and for Robin Hood. Then Robin held his cup aloft. "Stay," cried he, "tarry in your drinking till I give you a pledge. Here is to good King Richard of great renown, and may all enemies to him be confounded."
You wanted to toast the Lionheart as well? Yeah.
Pretend they're the background actors, okay? They're all really getting into the toast. Yeah, King Richard. Friar Peak. Then all drank the king's health, even the king himself. "Methinks, good fellow," said he, "thou hast drunk to thine own confusion." "Oh, never a whit," quoth merry Robin, "for I tell thee that we of Sherwood are more loyal to our lord the king than those of thine order. We would give up our lives for his benefiting, while ye are content to lie snug in your abbeys and priories, let reign who will." At this the king laughed. Quoth he, "Perhaps King Richard's welfare is more to me than thou wottest of, fellow. But enough of that matter. We have paid well for our fare, so canst thou not show us some merry entertainment? I've oft heard that ye are wondrous archers. Wilt thou not show us somewhat of your skill?" "With all my heart," said Robin. "We are always pleased to show our guests all the sport that is to be seen. As Gaffer Swanthold saith, 'tis a hard heart that will not give a caged starling of the best. And caged starlings ye are with us. Ho, lads, set up a garland at the end of the glade." Then, as the yeomen ran to do their master's bidding, Tuck turned to one of the mock friars. "Hearest thou our master?" quoth he with a sly wink. "Whenever he cometh across some poor piece of wit, he straightway layeth it on the shoulders of this Gaffer Swanthold, whoever he may be, so that the poor goodman goeth travelling about with all the odds and ends and tags and rags of our master's brain packed on his back." Thus spake Friar Tuck, but in a low voice, so that Robin could not hear him, for he felt somewhat nettled at Robin's cutting his talk so short. Robin, I don't think he knows. I don't think he knows. They have their hoods, like, really over their face. And have said that it's part of, like, a holy vow they've taken. So, yeah. You like my reading voice? Thank you. Hi, Red Pyramid. In the meantime, the mark at which they were to shoot was set up at 60 paces distance. It was a garland of leaves and flowers, 2 spans in width, which same was hung upon a stake in front of a broad tree trunk. There, quoth Robin, yon is a fair mark, lads. Each of you shoot 3 arrows thereat, and if any fellow misseth by so much as 1 arrow, he shall have a buffet of Will Scarlet's fist. Hearken to him, quoth Friar Tuck. Why, master, thou dost bestow buffets from thy strapping nephew, as though they were love taps from some bouncing lass. I warrant thou art safe to hit the garland thyself, but thou wouldst not be so free of his cuffing. First, David of Doncaster shot, and lodged all 3 of his arrows within the garland. Well done, David, cried Robin. Thou hast saved thine ears from a warming this day. Next, Midge, the miller, shot, and he also lodged his arrows in the garland. Hold on, wasn't Midge the miller's son? Oh no, did his dad die in the meantime? Wasn't Midge the miller's son? Now he's Midge the miller. You're trying to stay awake? Aw, rat boy. Totally fine to fall asleep. Oh yeah, get some good sleep. Next, Midge, the miller, shot, and he also lodged his arrows in the garland. Then followed Wat, the tinker, but alas for him, for one of his shafts missed the mark by the breadth of 2 fingers. Come hither, fellow, said Will Scarlet, in his soft, gentle voice. I owe thee somewhat that I would pay forthwith. Then Wat, the tinker, came forward and stood in front of Will Scarlet, screwing up his face and shutting his eyes tightly, as though he already felt his ears ringing with the buffet. Will Scarlet rolled up his sleeve and, standing on tiptoe, to give the greater swing to his arm, he struck with might and main. Woof! Came his palm against the tinker's head, and down went stout Wat to the grass, heels over head, as the wooden image at the fair goes down when the skillful player throws a cudgel at it. Why is this necessary? Frickin' boys. Then, as the tinker sat up upon the grass, rubbing his ear and winking and blinking at the bright stars that danced before his eyes, the yeoman roared with mirth till the forest rang. La, la, la. Yay for traumatic brain injuries. As for King Richard, he laughed till the tears ran down his cheeks. Thus the band shot, each in turn, some getting off scot-free and some winning a buffet that always sent them to the grass. And now, last of all, Robin took his place, and all was hushed as he shot. The first shaft he shot split a piece from the stake on which the garland was hung. The second lodged within an inch of the other. By my halatum, said King Richard to himself, would give 1,000 pounds for this fellow to be one of my guard. And now, for the 3rd time, Robin shot. But, alas for him, the arrow was ill-feathered, and wavering to one side, it smote an inch outside the garland. Oh shit. At this, a great roar went up,
those of the yeomen who sat upon the grass, rolling over and shouting with laughter, for never before had they seen their master so miss his mark. But Robin flung his bow upon the ground with vexation. "Now, out upon it!" cried he. "That shaft had an ill feather to it, for I felt it as it left my fingers. Give me a clean arrow, and I will engage to split the wand with it." At these words the yeoman laughed louder than ever. "Nay, good uncle," said Will Scarlet in his soft, sweet voice, "thou hast had thy fair chance, and hast missed thine aim out and out. I swear the arrow was as good as any that hath been loosed this day. Come hither. I owe thee somewhat, and would fain pay it." "Go, good master," roared Friar Tuck, "and may my blessing go with thee. Thou hast bestowed these love taps of Will Scarlet's with great freedom. It were pity an thou gottest not thine own share." "It may not be," said merry Robin. "I am king here, and no subject may raise hand against the king. But even our great King Richard may yield to the holy Pope without shame, and even take a tap from him by way of penance. Therefore, I will yield myself to this holy friar, who seemeth to be one in authority, and I will take my punishment from him." Thus saying, he turned to the king. "I prithee, brother, wilt thou take my punishing into thy holy hands?" "With all my heart," quoth merry King Richard, rising from where he was sitting. "I owe thee somewhat for having lifted a heavy weight of 50 pounds from my purse, so make room for him on the green, lads." "And thou makest me tumble," quoth Robin. "I will freely give thee back thy 50 pounds. But I tell thee, brother, if thou makest me not feel grass all along my back, I will take every farthing thou hast for thy boastful speech." "So be it," said the king. "I am willing to venture it." Thereupon he rolled up his sleeve and showed an arm that made the yeoman stare and bite his nether lip. But Robin, with his feet wide apart, stood firmly planted, waiting the other, smiling. Then the king swung back his arm and, balancing himself for a moment,
It's okay. It's okay. I'm sure it'll be fine. Why are you so talky?
Oh. 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 Nim was just sitting in the middle of the wreath eating, and Cloud came out from the shadows like a rock eel, you know? And just like lunged out at her and gave her a little butt nip. You know you've earned that today, Nim. We all saw what you did. It's caught on camera. You earned that butt nip. Okay. Then the king swung back his arm, and, balancing himself for a moment, he delivered a buffet at Robin that fell like a thunderbolt. Down went Robin, headlong upon the grass, for the stroke would have felled a stone wall. Then how the yeomen shouted with laughter, till their sides ached, for never had they seen such a buffet given in all their lives. As for Robin, he presently sat up and looked all around him, as though he had dropped from a cloud and had lit in a place he had never seen before. After a while, still gazing about him at his laughing yeomen, he put his fingertips softly to his ear and felt all around it tenderly. "Will Scarlet," said he, "count this fellow out his 50 pounds. I want nothing more, either of his money or of him. A murrain seize him and his buffeting. Would that I had taken my dues from thee, for I verily believe he hath deafened mine ear from ever hearing again." Then, While gusts of laughter still broke from the band, Will Scarlet counted out the 50 pounds, and the king dropped it back into his purse again. "I give thee thanks, fellow," said he, "and if ever thou shouldst wish for another box of the ear to match the one thou hast, come to me, and I will fit thee with it for naught." So spake the merry king, but even as he ended, there came suddenly the sound of many voices, and out from the covert burst Little John and 60 men, with Sir Richard of the Lee in the midst. Across the glade they came running, and as they came, Sir Richard shouted to Robin, "Make haste, dear friend, gather thy band together and come with me. King Richard left Nottingham town this very morning, and cometh to seek thee in the woodlands. I know not how he cometh, for it was but a rumour of this that reached me. Nevertheless, I know that it is the truth." Oh, Richard, no. Oh, Richard, this is treason. Oh, shit, okay. "Therefore hasten with all thy men, and come to Castle Lee, for there thou mayst lie hidden till thy present danger passeth. Who are these strangers that thou hast with thee?" Oh, I don't want Richard to get killed. I like him. He's a good man. "Why," quoth merry Robin, rising from the grass, "these are certain gentle guests that came with us from the high road, over by Newstead Abbey. I know not their names, but I have become right well acquaint with this lusty rogue's palm this morning. Marry, the pleasure of this acquaintance hath dost me a deaf ear and 50 pounds to boot." Sir Richard looked keenly at the tall friar, who, drawing himself up to his full height, looked fixedly back at the knight. Then, of a sudden, Sir Richard's cheeks grew pale, for he knew who it was that he looked upon. Quickly he leapt from off his horse's back and flung himself upon his knees before the other. At this, the king, seeing that Sir Richard knew him, threw back his cowl, and all the yeomen saw his face and knew him also, for there was not one of them but had been in the crowd in the good town of Nottingham, and had seen him riding side by side with the sheriff. Down they fell upon their knees, nor could they say a word. Then the king looked all around right grimly, and last of all his glance came back and rested again upon Sir Richard of the Lee. "How is this, Sir Richard?" said he, sternly. "How darest thou step between me and these fellows? And how darest thou offer thy knightly castle of the Lee for a refuge for them? Wilt thou make it a hiding place for the most renowned outlaws in England?" Then Sir Richard of the Lee raised his eyes to the king's face. "Far be it from me," said he, "to do aught that could bring your majesty's anger upon me. Yet sooner would I face your majesty's wrath than suffer aught of harm that I could stay to befall upon Robin Hood and his band. For to them I owe life, honor, everything. Should I then desert him in his hour of need?" Ere the knight had done speaking, one of the mock friars that stood near the king came forward and knelt beside Sir Richard, and throwing back his cowl, showed the face of young Sir Henry of the Lee. Then Sir Henry grasped his father's hand and said, "Here kneels one who hath served thee well, King Richard, and, as thou knowest, hath stepped between thee and death in Palestine. Yet do I abide by my dear father, and here I say also that I would freely give shelter to this noble outlaw, Robin Hood, even though it brought thy wrath upon me. For my father's honor and my father's welfare, are as dear to me as mine own. This is really gonna show what kind of man Richard is. 'Cause, like, they could totally be killed for this. King Richard looked from one to the other of the kneeling knights, and at last the frown faded from his brow, and a smile twitched at the corners of his lips. "Marry, Sir Richard," quoth the king, "thou art a bold-spoken knight, and thy freedom of speech weigheth not heavily against thee with me. And thy freedom of speech weigheth not heavily against thee with me. This young son of thine taketh after his sire both in boldness of speech and of deed. For, as he saith, he stepped one time betwixt me and death. Wherefore I would pardon thee for his sake, even if thou hadst done more than thou hast. Rise, all of you, for ye shall suffer no harm through me this day. For it were pity that a merry time should end in a manner as to mar its joyousness." Then all arose, and the king beckoned Robin Hood to come to him. "How now," quoth he, "is thine ear still too deaf to hear me speak?" "Mine ears would be deafened in death, ere they would cease to hear your majesty's voice," said Robin. "As for the blow that your majesty struck me, I would say that, though my sins are haply many, methinks they have been paid up in full thereby." "Thinkest thou so?" said the king with somewhat of sternness in his voice. "Now I tell thee that but for 3 things, to wit, my mercifulness, my love for a stout woodsman, and the loyalty thou hast avowed for me, thine ears, mayhap, might have been more tightly closed than ever a buffet from me could have shut them. Talk not lightly of thy sins, good Robin, but come, look up. Thy danger is past, for hereby I give thee and all thy band free pardon. But, in sooth, I cannot let you roam the forest as ye have done in the past. Therefore, I will take thee at thy word when thou didst say thou wouldst give thy service to me, and thou shalt go back to London with me. We will take that bold knave Little John also, and likewise thy cousin Will Scarlet, and thy minstrel Allen a Dale. As for the rest of thy band, we will take their names and have them duly recorded as Royal Rangers, for methinks it were wiser to have them changed to law-abiding caretakers of our dear in Sherwood, than to leave them to run at large as outlawed slayers thereof. But now, get a feast ready. I would see how ye live in the woodlands." Banana, thank you for the gift sub to Stout Yeoman, and also King Dicko. Oh, okay. So, Robin bade his men make ready a grand feast. Straightway great fires were kindled and burned brightly, at which savory things roasted sweetly. While this was going forward, the king bade Robin call Allen a Dale, for he would hear him sing. So word was passed for Allen, and presently he came, bringing his harp. "Marry," said King Richard, "if thy singing match thy looks, it is fair enough. Prithee, strike up a ditty, and let us have a taste of thy skill." Then Allen touched his harp lightly, and all words were hushed, while he sang thus. "Oh, where hast thou been, my daughter? Oh, where hast thou been this day? Daughter, my daughter. Oh, I have been to the river's side, where the waters lie all grey and wide, and the grey sky broods o'er the leaden tide, and the shrill wind sighs a-straining. What sawest thou there, my daughter? What sawest thou there this day?
daughter, my daughter. Oh, I saw a boat come drifting nigh, with the quivering rushes hiss and sigh, and the water souse as it gurgles by, and the shrill wind sighs a straining. What sailed in the boat, my daughter? What sailed in the boat this day, daughter, my daughter? Oh, there was one all clad in white, and about his face hung a pallid light, and his eyes gleamed sharp like the stars at night, and the shrill wind sighed a straining. And what said he, my daughter? What said he to thee this day, daughter, my daughter? Oh, said he not, but did he this? Thrice on my lips did he press a kiss, and my heartstrings shrunk with an awful bliss, and the shrill wind sighed a straining. Why growest thou so cold, my daughter? Why growest thou so cold and white, daughter, my daughter? Oh, never a word the daughter said, but she sat all straight with a drooping head, for her heart was stilled and her face was dead, and the shrill wind sighed a straining. All listened in silence, and when Allen a Dale had done, King Richard heaved a sigh. By the breath of my body, Allen, quoth he, that was such a wondrous sweet voice, that it strangely moves my heart. But what doleful ditty is this for the lips of a stout yeoman? Well, I would rather hear thee sing a song of love and battle than a sad thing like that. Moreover, I understand it not. What meanest thou by the words? I know not, your majesty, said Allen, shaking his head, for oft times I sing that which I do not clearly understand mine own self. Well, well, quoth the king, let it pass. Only I tell thee this, Allen, thou shouldst turn thy songs to such matters as I spoke of, to wit, love or war, for in sooth thou hast a sweeter voice than Blondel, and methinks he was the best minstrel that ever I heard. But now one came forward and said that the feast was ready. So Robin Hood brought King Richard and those with him to where it lay all spread out on fair white linen cloths, which lay upon the soft green grass. Then King Richard sat him down and feasted and drank, and when he was done, he swore roundly that he had never sat at such a lusty repast in all his life before. That night he lay in Sherwood Forest upon a bed of sweet green leaves, and early the next morning he set forth from the woodlands for Nottingham town, Robin Hood and all his band going with him. You may guess what a stir there was in the good town when all these famous outlaws came marching into the streets. As for the sheriff, he knew not what to say nor where to look when he saw Robin Hood in such high favor with the king, while all his heart was filled with gall because of the vexation that lay upon him. The next day the king took leave of Nottingham town, so Robin Hood and Little John and Will Scarlet and Allen a Dale shook hands with all the rest of the band, kissing the cheeks of each man and swearing that they would often come to Sherwood and see them. Then each mounted his horse and rode away in the train of the king. End of chapter. What about Alan's wife? He's married. I hope she's coming too. Epilogue. Thus end the merry adventures of Robin Hood, for in spite of his promise, it was many a year ere he saw Sherwood again. After a year or two at court, Little John came back to Nottinghamshire, where he lived in an orderly way, though within sight of Sherwood, and where he achieved great fame as the champion of all England with the quarterstaff. Will Scarlet, after a time, came back to his own home, whence he had been driven by his unlucky killing of his father's steward. The rest of the band did their duty as royal rangers right well. But Robin Hood and Allen a Dale did not come again to Sherwood so quickly, for thus it was. Robin, through his great fame as an archer, became a favorite with the king, so that he speedily rose in rank to be the chief of all the yeomen.
At last the king, seeing how faithful and loyal he was, created him Earl of Huntingdon. So Robin followed the king to the wars, and found his time so full that he had no chance to come back to Sherwood for even so much as a day. As for Alan a Dale and his wife, the fair Ellen, they followed Robin Hood and shared in all his ups and downs of life. And now, dear friend, you who have journeyed with me in all these merry doings, I will not bid you follow me further, but will drop your hand here with a good den. Hold on. With a good den, if you wish it. For that which cometh hereafter speaks of the breaking up of things, and shows how joys and pleasures that are dead and gone can never be set upon their feet to walk again. I will not dwell upon the matter over long, but will tell as speedily as may be of how that stout fellow, Robin Hood, died as he had lived, not at court as Earl of Huntingdon, but with bow in hand, his heart in the greenwood, and he himself a right yeoman. King Richard died upon the battlefield in such a way as properly became a lion-hearted king, as you yourself no doubt know. So, after a time, the Earl of Huntingdon, or Robin Hood as we still call him as of old, finding nothing for his doing abroad, came back to merry England again. With him came Alan a Dale and his wife, the fair Ellen, for these two had been chief of Robin's household ever since he had left Sherwood Forest. It was in the springtime when they landed once more on the shores of England. The leaves were green, and the small birds sang blithely, just as they used to do in fair Sherwood, when Robin Hood roamed the woodland shades with a free heart and a light heel. All the sweetness of the time and the joyousness of everything brought back to Robin's mind his forest life, so that a great longing came upon him to behold the woodlands once more. So he went straightway to King John and besought leave of him to visit Nottingham for a short season. The king gave him leave to come and to go, but bade him not stay longer than 3 days at Sherwood. So Robin Hood and Alan a Dale set forth without delay to Nottinghamshire and Sherwood Forest. The first night they took up their inn at Nottingham town, yet they did not go to pay their duty to the sheriff, for his worship bore many a bitter grudge against Robin Hood, which grudges had not been lessened by Robin's rise in the world. The next day, at an early hour, they mounted their horses and set forth for the woodlands. As they passed along the road, it seemed to Robin that he knew every stick and stone that his eyes looked upon. Yonder was a path that he had oft-times trod of a mellow evening, with Little John beside him. Here was one, now nigh choked with brambles, along which he and a little band had walked when they went forth to seek a certain curtal friar. Thus they rode slowly onward, talking about these old familiar things, old and yet new, for they found more in them than they had ever thought of before. Thus at last they came to the open glade and the broad, wide-spreading greenwood tree, which was their home for so many years. Neither of the two spoke when they stood beneath that tree. Robin looked all about him at the well-known things, for like what they used to be, and yet so different. Oh, so like what they used to be, and yet so different. For where once was the bustle of many busy fellows, was now the quietness of solitude. And as he looked, the woodlands, the greensward, and the sky all blurred together in his sight through salt tears. For such a great yearning came upon him as he looked on these things,
as well known to him as the fingers of his right hand, that he could not keep back the water from his eyes. That morning he had slung his good old bugle horn over his shoulder, and now, with the yearning, came a great longing to sound his bugle once more. He raised it to his lips. He blew a blast. Tirla, lirla. The sweet, clear notes went winding down the forest paths, coming back again from the more distant bosky shades in faint echoes of sound. Tirla, lirla, tirla, lirla, until it faded away and was lost. Now, it chanced that on that very morn, Little John was walking through a spur of the forest upon certain matters of business, and as he paced along, sunk in meditation, the faint, clear notes of a distant bugle horn came to his ear. As leaps the stag when it feels the arrow at its heart, so leapt Little John when that distant sound met his ear. All the blood in his body seemed to rush like a flame into his cheeks as he bent his head and listened. Again came the bugle note, thin and clear, and yet again it sounded. Then Little John gave a great, wild cry of yearning, of joy, and yet of grief, and putting down his head, he dashed into the thicket. Onward he plunged, crackling and rending as the wild boar rushes through the underbrush. Little recked he of thorns and briars that scratched his flesh and tore his clothing, for all he thought of was to get, by the shortest way, to the greenwood glade whence he knew the sound of the bugle horn came. Out he burst from the covert, at last, a shower of little broken twigs falling about him, and without pausing a moment rushed forward and flung himself at Robin's feet. Then he clasped his arms around the master's knees, and all his body was shaken with great sobs. Neither could Robin nor Allen a Dale speak, but stood, looking down at Little John, the tears rolling down their cheeks. While they thus stood, 7 royal rangers rushed into the open glade and raised a great shout of joy at the sight of Robin. And at their head was Will Stutely. Then after a while came 4 more, panting with their running, and 2 of these 4 were Will Scathelock and Midge the miller, for all of these had heard the sound of Robin Hood's horn. All these ran to Robin and kissed his hands and his clothing with great sound of weeping. After a while, Robin looked around him with tear-dimmed eyes and said in a husky voice, "Now, I swear that never again will I leave these dear woodlands. I have been away from them and from you too long. Now do I lay by the name of Robert, Earl of Huntingdon, and take upon me once again that nobler title, Robin Hood, the yeoman." At this a great shout went up, and all the yeomen shook one another's hands for joy. The news that Robin Hood had come back again to dwell in Sherwood, as of old, spread like wildfire all over the countryside, so that ere a se'nnight had passed, nearly all of his old yeomen had gathered about him again. But when the news of all this reached the ears of King John, he swore both loud and deep, and took a solemn vow that he would not rest until he had Robin Hood in his power, dead or alive. Now, there was present at court a certain knight, Sir William Dale,
as gallant a soldier as ever donned harness. Sir William Dale was well acquainted with Sherwood Forest, for he was head keeper over that part of it that lay nigh to good Mansfield town. So to him the king turned, and bade him take an army of men and go straightway to seek Robin Hood. Likewise, the king gave Sir William his signet ring to show to the sheriff, that he might raise all his armed men to aid the others in their chase of Robin. So, Sir William and the sheriff set forth to do the king's bidding and to search for Robin Hood. And for 7 days they hunted up and down, yet found him not. Where the Disney movie starts? No, in the Disney movie, Richard is away at the Crusades, and John is Prince John, who wants to be king, but is just the prince, and is kind of like ruling in Richard's stead while Richard is away at the Crusades. Webcam Manatee, hello. Hope that you have a most wonderful Merry Christmas. You've always been such a beautiful person inside and out. You've been so welcoming to me and everyone else. I know I haven't been a big part of your community, but your kindness has always meant a lot to me, and I just want to thank you and wish you the happiest holiday that you deserve. Manatee. Thank you. That is such a kind message. What the? Oh my goodness. Thank you, Manatee. That means a lot. Thank you, thank you. Also, I missed Ashley subbing. Oh my goodness. Ashley the Femme, thank you for the resub. Thank you, thank you. Oh my goodness. Hi, Ashley. Yeah, at the end of the Disney cartoon, Richard comes back from the Crusades. Yeah. Alright. Right. For 7 days they hunted up and down, and yet found him not. Oh yeah, John does look like a lioness. He's got no mane. Yeah. After all, this is Richard the First. If I could find someone to buy London, I would sell it and then move to France. You know, a lot of royalty has been reimagined in folklore. Too late to be known as John the First. He's sure to be known as John the Worst. Now, had Robin Hood been as peaceful as of old, everything might have ended in smoke, as other such ventures had always done before. But he had fought for years under King Richard, and was changed from what he used to be. It galled his pride to thus flee away before those sent against him, as a chased fox flees from the hounds. So thus it came about, at last, that Robin Hood and his yeomen met Sir William and the sheriff and their men in the forest, and a bloody fight followed. The first man slain in that fight was the Sheriff of Nottingham, for he fell from his horse with an arrow in his brain ere half a score of shafts had been sped. Christ! They were like aiming at him first. Oh my goodness. Many a better man than the sheriff kissed the sod that day, but at last, Sir William Dale being wounded and most of his men slain, he withdrew, beaten, and left the forest. But scores of good fellows were left behind him, stretched out all stiff beneath the sweet green boughs. But though Robin Hood had beaten off his enemies in fair fight, all this lay heavily upon his mind, so that he brooded over it until a fever seized upon him. For 3 days it held him, and though he strove to fight it off, he was forced to yield at last. Thus it came that on the morning of the 4th day, he called Little John to him and told him that he could not shake the fever from him, and that he would go to his cousin, the prioress of the nunnery near Kirklees in Yorkshire, who was a skillful leech, and he would have her open a vein in his arm and take a little blood from him for the bettering of his health. Then he bade Little John make ready to go also, for he might perchance need aid in his journeying. So Little John and he took their leave of the others, and Robin Hood bade Will Stutely be captain of the band until they should come back. Thus they came by easy stages and slow journeying until they reached the nunnery of Kirklees. Now, Robin had done much to aid this cousin of his, for it was through King Richard's love of him that she had been made prioress of the place. But there is naught in the world so easily forgot as gratitude. So, when the prioress of Kirklees had heard how her cousin, the Earl of Huntingdon, had thrown away his earldom and gone back again to Sherwood, she was vexed to the soul, and feared lest her cousinship with him should bring the king's wrath upon her also. Salem. Hello. Hi, Salem. Thus it happened that when Robin came to her and told her how he wished her services as leech, she began plotting ill against him in her mind, thinking that by doing evil to him, she might find favor with his enemies. Nevertheless, she kept this well to herself and received Robin with seeming kindness. She led him up the winding stone stair to a room which was just beneath the eaves of a high round tower, but she would not let Little John come with him. So, the poor yeoman turned his feet away from the door of the nunnery and left his master in the hands of the women. But though he did not come in, neither did he go far away, for he laid him down in a little glade nearby, where he could watch the place that Robin abided, like some great faithful dog turned away from the door where his master has entered. After the women had gotten Robin Hood to the room beneath the caves, sorry, I'm not wearing my glasses, to the room beneath the eaves, the prioress sent all of the others away. Then taking a little cord, she tied it tightly about Robin's arm, as though she were about to bleed him. And so she did bleed him. But the vein she opened was not one of those that lie close and blue beneath the skin. Deeper she cut than that, for she opened one of those veins through which the bright red blood runs leaping from the heart. Holy plot twist! Of this Robin knew not, for though he saw the blood flow, it did not come fast enough to make him think that there was anything ill in it. I did not see this coming, you guys. This is... oh my god. Okay. Having done this vile deed, the prioress turned and left her cousin, locking the door behind her. All that livelong day the blood ran from Robin Hood's arm, nor could he check it, though he strove in every way to do so. Oh my god! Again and again he called for help, but no help came, for his cousin had betrayed him, and Little John was too far away to hear his voice. So he bled and bled until he felt his strength slipping away from him. Then he arose, tottering, and bearing himself up by the palms of his hands against the wall, he reached his bugle horn at last. Thrice he sounded it, but weakly and faintly, for his breath was fluttering through sickness and loss of strength. Nevertheless, Little John heard it where he lay in the glade, and with a heart all sick with dread, he came running and leaping toward the nunnery. Loudly he knocked at the door, and in a loud voice shouted for them to let him in. But the door was of massive oak, strongly barred and studded with spikes. So they felt safe and bade Little John begone. Then Little John's heart was mad with grief and fear for his master's life. Wildly he looked about him, and his sight fell upon a heavy stone mortar, such as 3 men could not lift nowadays. Little John took 3 steps forward, and bending his back, heaved the stone mortar up from where it stood deeply rooted. Staggering under its weight, he came forward and hurled it, crashing against the door. In burst the door, and away fled the frightened nuns, shrieking at his coming. Then Little John strode in, and never a word said he, but up the winding stone steps he ran till he reached the room wherein his master was. Here he found the door locked also, but putting his shoulder against it, he burst the locks as though they were made of brittle ice. There he saw his own dear master leaning against the grey stone wall, his face all white and drawn, and his head swaying to and fro with weakness. Then, with a great, wild cry of love and grief and pity, Little John leapt forward and caught Robin Hood in his arms. Up he lifted him, as a mother lifts her child, and carrying him to the bed, laid him tenderly thereon. And now the prioress came in hastily, for she was frightened at what she had done, and dreaded the vengeance of Little John and the others of the band. Then she staunched the blood by cunning bandages, so that it flowed no more. All the while Little John stood grimly by, and after she had done, he sternly bade her to be gone, and she obeyed, pale and trembling. Then, after she had departed, Little John spake cheering words, laughing loudly and saying that all this was a child's fright, and that no stout yeoman would die at the loss of a few drops of blood. Why, quoth he, give thee a sennight, and thou wilt be roaming the woodlands as boldly as ever. But Robin shook his head and smiled faintly where he lay. Mine own dear Little John, whispered he, heaven bless thy kind, rough heart. But, dear friend, we will never roam the woodlands together again. Aye, but we will, quoth Little John loudly. I say it again. Aye, out upon it. Who dares say that any more harm shall come upon thee? Am I not by? Let me see who dares touch. Here he stopped of a sudden, for his words choked him. At last he said, in a deep, husky voice, Now, if aught of harm befalls thee because of this day's doings, I swear, by St. George, that the red cock shall crow for the roof tree of this house, for the hot flame shall lick every crack and cranny thereof. As for these women, here he ground his teeth, it will be an ill day for them. But Robin Hood took Little John's rough brown fist in his white hands, and chid him softly in his low, weak voice, asking him since what time Little John had thought of doing harm to women, even in vengeance. Thus he talked till, at last, the other promised, in a choking voice, that no ill should fall upon the place, no matter what happened. Then a silence fell, and Little John sat with Robin Hood's hand in his, gazing out of the open window, ever and anon swallowing a great lump that came in his throat. Meantime the sun dropped slowly to the west, till all the sky was ablaze with red glory. Then Robin Hood, in a weak, faltering voice, bade Little John raise him, that he might look out once more upon the woodlands. So the yeoman lifted him in his arms as he bade, and Robin Hood's head lay on his friend's shoulder. Long he gazed, with a wide, lingering look, while the other sat with bowed head, the hot tears rolling one after another from his eyes and dripping upon his bosom, for he felt that the time of parting was near at hand. What the fuck? You guys were like, Robin Hood's gonna make you cry tonight, and I was like, not Robin Hood, but like, this is so heart-wrenching. Then presently Robin Hood bade him string his stout bow for him, and chose a smooth, fair arrow from his quiver. This Little John did, though without disturbing his master or rising from where he sat. Robin Hood's fingers wrapped lovingly around his good bow, and he smiled faintly when he felt it in his grasp. Then he knocked the arrow on that part of the string that the tips of his fingers knew so well. Little John, said he, Little John, mine own dear friend, and him I love better than all others in the world, mark, I prithee, where this arrow lodges, and there let my grave be digged. Lay me with my face toward the east, Little John, and see that my resting place be kept green, and that my weary bones be not disturbed. As he finished speaking, he raised himself of a sudden, and sat upright. His old strength seemed to come back to him, and drawing the bowstring to his ear, he sped the arrow out of the open casement. As the shaft flew, his hand sank slowly with the bow, till it lay across his knees, and his body likewise sank back again into Little John's loving arms. But something had sped from that body, even as the winged arrow sped from the bow. Oh, what the fuck? Bro. No. What? What? Oh my god. You guys. I thought the epilogue was gonna be like half a page. To be fair, he did warn us. He was like, if you want to end with the happy stories, stop reading now. Okay. For some minutes, Little John sat motionless, but presently he laid that which he held gently down, then, folding the hands upon the breast and covering up the face, he turned upon his heel and left the room without a word or a sound. Upon the steep stairway, he met the prioress and some of the chief among the sisters. To them he spoke in a deep, quivering voice, and said he, "An ye go within a score of feet of yonder room,
I will tear down your rookery over your heads, so that not one stone shall be left upon another. Bear my words well in mind, for I mean them." So saying, he turned and left them, and they presently saw him running rapidly across the open, through the falling of the dusk, until he was swallowed up by the forest. Oof. Hold on. It's not done yet. Not done yet. I'm just stretching. Oh, gravity. Okay. The early gray of the coming morn was just beginning to lighten the black sky toward the eastward, when Little John and 6 more of the band came rapidly across the open toward the nunnery. They saw no one, for the sisters were all hidden away from sight, having been frightened by Little John's words. Up the stone stair they ran, and a great sound of weeping was presently heard. Sorry, guys. I'm having cramping in my back. I can do it. I can finish this story. I can finish it. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. I'm having, big muscle in my back is like cramped up. Okay, we are almost done. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. No, I can't. No, I can't. I need like a minute. Hold on, guys. I'm so sorry. A standing sitting desk. No, standing's actually tough for me. Standing is more difficult. This just happens sometimes. Okay. Let's finish this and then I'll take a bit of a longer break. So they went forth. Oh wait, no, sorry. Up the stone stair they ran, and a great sound of weeping was presently heard. After a while this ceased, and then came the scuffling and shuffling of men's feet as they carried a heavy weight down the steep and winding stairs. So they went forth from the nunnery, and as they passed through the doors thereof, a great loud sound of wailing arose from the glade that lay all dark in the dawning, as though many men, hidden in the shadows, had lifted up their voices in sorrow. Thus died Robin Hood at Kirklees Nunnery in fair Yorkshire, with mercy in his heart toward those that had been his undoing. For thus he showed mercy for the erring and pity. For thus he showed mercy for the erring and pity for the weak through all the time of his living,
His yeomen were scattered henceforth, but no great ill befell them thereafter. For a more merciful sheriff, and one who knew them not so well, succeeding the one that had gone, and they being separated here and there throughout the countryside, they abided in peace and quietness, so that many lived to hand down these tales to their children and their children's children. A certain one saith that upon a stone at Kirklees is an old inscription. This I give in the ancient English in which it was written, and thus it runs. Here underneath this little stone lays Robert, Earl of Huntington, nae archer there, as he say, as high say good, and people called him Robin Hood. Sick outlaws as he and his men will England neither see again. Obit 24 Cal Decembris 1247. Here underneath this little stone lies Robert, Earl of Huntington, no archer ever as he's so good, and people called him Robin Hood. There's not a translation there, that's just me. I think like swick and sick, doesn't that mean like such, I think? Oh, he did. He died on the 24th of December. This is a Christmas story. I knew it. I knew it. Damn. Okay. You read so beautifully. It's so easy to get invested in whatever you're reading. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So I'm just going off of, like, because I know it says in ancient English, but this is Middle English. Yeah. Okay. And now, dear friend, we also must part, for our merry journeyings have ended. And here, at the grave of Robin Hood, we turn, each going his own way. The end. Okay. I'm not okay. I'm not okay either. What the heck? Okay, first off, I'm so sorry that kind of came out from nowhere and like caught us all unawares. This has been such a hilarious book so far. I was not prepared. I was not prepared. Holy hell. Oh, it was written well though. Oh my god. Like it was possibly like the best chapter in terms of impact, but damn, that was sad. In the version your granddad read you, Robin's arrow he shot landed next to where Marion's grave was. Oh man. Oh man. Hi, Blue Jay. Little John would go on and open up a successful cafe in Nottingham. Anarchy, thank you for the 100 biddies. Oh my goodness. Yeah, damn. That's fucking tragic. I really enjoyed the whole book, though. My one complaint about this book is that there's no stories about Maid Marian at all. At all. Hey, Banana, what? What's up? But yeah, when you guys were like, I bet you're gonna cry at Robin Hood, which, for context, is just because I was feeling emotional in general. I was like, nah, I'll be safe reading Robin Hood. I'll be safe reading Robin Hood. It did feel like a totally different book. Are we gonna read the original King Arthur? Is that meant to say King Arthur? I'm guessing Loki. I would like. Do you mean Le Morte d'Arthur? Because it's hard to say like the original book with stories this old. So, like at least a couple years ago, like a while ago, for one of our Myth Mondays, we did King Arthur stories, but it wasn't from Le Morte d'Arthur. Yeah, I've got that one on the shelf. We could do that. We could, if you guys wanted. I feel kind of like, you know, I like bouncing around the world and not like being too Eurocentric with the Mythology Mondays, but I mean, we could just, if you mean just like reading it like outside of Mythology Monday. Robin needed to get leeched and then yeah. That is not, even when we started that last chapter and it said that he died, I was like, okay, he's gonna like get killed in battle or like, do you know what I mean? That was a very unexpected end. Reading the endings first from now on. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I've never heard of how Robin Hood dies, and I imagine that he has different deaths in other stories. Like, these stories are so old. Like, so old. I imagine there's various versions of how he dies. Chatty Maddie, welcome in everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Hi Maddie. How's it going? Thank you for the raid. You read that so bloody good. Appreciate you. Oh, thank you, Banana. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Hi, Maddie. How did he die in this? Rob, it's brutal. He was feeling a bit sick, so he went to his cousin, who's a nun and a healer, to ask her to let his blood a bit, which is, you know, defunct medical practice, but like at the time he was like, leech me. And instead she intentionally cut deep to an artery and then locked him in the room and just let him drain of blood. You just had a 9-hour gaming stream? Seriously? What game are you playing? You guys make sure you're following Sir Chatty Maddie, who usually is doing writing streams and working on his book, which is so fucking awesome, but apparently also does a 9-hour gaming stream. Nuns will absolutely shank you. Dude, Rob, it was written so well though. It did make me tear up. That was crazy. Damn. Do you like books of history, like record events of historical time? Kind of, like I find history interesting in that it becomes story and I enjoy story. I prefer like historical fiction, which I know you can't, like, then you have to double check, okay, which of these things are actually true. But I don't typically read a lot of like non-fiction history books. You're playing Star Wars The Old Republic. Oh, okay, I've heard good things. If something stressful happened IRL, so you need to decompress. You don't leave your followers stream list. That was a great idea then, Maddie. Yeah, I think I can relate. It's a stressful time, man. I hope it helped. I mean, if you stayed on for 9 hours, you're probably having fun with it. Yeah, fictional characters in a non-fictional setting. Totally. That's what I mean for historical fiction. Yeah. Yep. And often they'll have like actual historical characters as well. There's no record of an actual highwayman that went by anything similar to Robin Hood. Yeah, it could be a collection of little things, you know, like possibly there were multiple men who actually existed whose tales became tales of Robin Hood. Most stories have like a grain of truth in them at least. But Robin Hood as we know him as a character is fictional, yeah. Thank you for the bedtime story, just we need to relax. Wait, are you being serious, Connor? Because that was such a sad last story. Could have been a franchise like the Dread Pirate Roberts. I like that idea. Tales that led to inspiration to yeah, you know, like if someone's like, oh, give us a tale, and like someone's like, oh, I heard this thing about like my cousin's friend George did this funny thing, but no one cares about George. They'd be like, have you heard this tale about Robin Hood, you know? And then everyone's like, ooh, a Robin Hood story, right? So yeah, probably like lots of things got attributed to him. Writing a story of Robin Hood and selling it during a festival was such a thing. Several manuscripts. Exactly, Zen, yeah. George Hood. Well, Connor, I'm glad this helped you relax. I do hope you get some genuine quality sleep. Will I eternally picture I like that they compare Robin Hood to a fox several times throughout these stories. Tricksy and sly and clever. What would a modern day version of Robin Hood look like? I don't know if you can have it. Because, I don't know, someone like, I feel like him living in the forest is like crucial. And someone living in a forest nowadays, that's a very different vibe. Oh, really, Skewer? I've never heard of him. Okay, well, let us wrap up the YouTube stream. Twitch is not over yet, but let me wrap up on YouTube. Thank you for anyone who has been watching this on YouTube. If you enjoyed it and you feel like dropping a like or subbing if you haven't yet, that would be amazing. We're gonna keep going on Twitch for a little bit longer, probably not too much longer, but we'll see how things go. I will be back. Okay, real talk, I don't know if we're reading on Sunday or not. We might be. TBD. I might be live again on this YouTube channel on Sunday night. But Sean has put my Twitch link in there, so I will be live on Twitch regardless on Sunday night and on Monday night. And then we're taking a little bit of a break for Christmas, but I am still working on getting Christmas Carol edited and posted, you know, before Christmas. So that'll be on this YouTube channel. So thank you. And okay. Oh, Sean, wait. Pop the throne link in there. I need to set up a bot to put some of those, make some commands for YouTube. That's a New Year thing. That's a thing for the New Year's. Anyways, bye YouTube. I will see you soon. Either way.